Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and to some Canadian Grand Prix race reaction. What a race. Are you over that one yet? That was all a bit exciting, wasn't it, for Formula One in 2024? Really enjoyed that. Not a great surprise, it's Canada. More often than not, we get some great racing, and a sprinkling or two of rain really did spice things up. But yes, that was good stuff from F1. I enjoyed that very much. Hope you did too. As always, we're going to let you know we've got a poll going in the chat. Rate the Canadian Grand Prix, great, good, average / okay or bad. 71% saying great, 27% saying good, 1% saying average, okay, and 1% just can never be pleased and are never happy, and they're saying it was a bad race. That was far from a bad race. I thoroughly enjoyed that, thoroughly enjoyed it. As a neutral, let's leave it there. If we get into that too much, I'm going to cry. Let's just hop straight into this. Lots to talk about. I updated my software, so I'm hoping this is going to work. Good evening, Stuart.
London calling. Can you hear me?
I think you're going proper Eurovision then. It just sort of like, oh, what an amazing show this evening. Yes, I've got you. That's fine. Brilliant.
That was fun, wasn't it? That was a whole lot of fun. Any of that top five could have won that race, which is what I like to see. I certainly don't mind our Mr. Dominant driver winning if we don't know he's going to win, and that's exactly what we got today. There was strategy, there was intrigue, there was a bit of bargy. What else could you want?
It's like we always say, isn't it, with when Max Verstappen wins and people go, oh, Verstappen winning again, but we always say, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, It's all right for a great race, and I thought that was a lot of fun. Yes, obviously helped by the rain and some chaos, but even prior to the rain, I think coming into this weekend, I was really looking forward to it because things have really closed up, haven't they, at the front? And we were talking about this last time that we were live. So it's great to see that, and I'm really hoping that this, even if we're not going to get a championship fight in the Drivers' Championship, let's just have races like this that make it interesting, keep Max Verstappen and Red Bull on their toes, and we're going to have a great season, hopefully. So really looking forward to the rest of this season, and triple header soon, actually. So it's going to get a bit crackers, but yeah.
You could tell it's a good race if you seem to be beaming, even though you're a Ferrari fan.
Don't be mean.
Sure we'll get to that later.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, much later. We're going to go through, as we always do, in order. We'll do the top three, the point scorers, and then the rest, which will include some crying from Sean, I'm sure. So let's get through this first, and then we can do whatever else we're going to do. Well, talk, I imagine. So, Max Verstappen, winner of the 2024 Canadian Grand Prix. Not easy. We have multiple race leaders today. We've had Russell in the lead, Norris in the lead, but ultimately when push came to shove and whatnot, Max Verstappen took the win, as he often does, of course. That's his 7th of the season, or his 6th of the season for Verstappen, and his 60th career win. It feels like all of which seem to have come in the last couple of years, but obviously a few more came before that. But quite a few notes on Max, really. He was all over the back of Russell on lap 15, having kind of ended up behind him by a couple of seconds initially, maybe just, I don't know, pacing himself, looking after tyres, I don't know, but he soon closed that gap down. Start of lap 17, got it wrong on the exit of turn 1 and went wide, so it wasn't a perfect day at all. Rejoined at turn 2 ahead of Norris. When DRS was enabled, Verstappen had to fend off Lando Norris, but those two are much quicker than George Russell, and they kind of caught him fairly swiftly. Took P2 from Russell on lap 21 after they'd all pitted. Russell had cut the chicane as well, which didn't help after Norris had taken the lead, and then pitted under lap 45 in reaction to Piastri and Hamilton. Ride issues again, can't touch curbs. Sorry. And yeah, pretty not easy from there, but controlled, I would say, Stuart. Controlled is a good word. I like that.
Yeah, that's how I'll put it. He drove the race he needed to drive. It got a little lucky with regards to Norris, so he was able to take the lead of the race and sort of control it from there. There were lots of times during this race when Max wasn't the fastest guy on track, really, but he was sort of positioned well to remain in the fight. He never looked ragged. He never looked like he never looked really sort of worried or sort of not quite on the pace of people around him, which was more of the case in the last couple of Grand Prix. So I think he knew that if he was in among it, the race might come to him if he was lucky or if someone made a mistake. So yeah, good win from him, really. Good win. Great strategy from the team. I think he only made one mistake, which, considering the top five all made at least one mistake, Russell had his fair share. I think that's pretty good going in very, very tricky conditions. We saw how frightfully slow that first lap was. We knew how tricky it was until those tires got warmed up. So yeah, great stuff, really.
Yeah, like I say, once he got it out in front, it never looked. I was saying, never looked in doubt. There was always that risk, wasn't there? You all you have to do is wander slightly offline, catch a bit of water, and you're in the wall, or you end up in a spin, or you end up go straight across and you go across the grass, as Yuki Tsunoda showed. We'll talk about that later. That you're soon into a spin, aren't you? So it wasn't. Mm-hmm. It was obviously there's always a risk that's going to happen, but in terms of the pace from those behind, I think once everything had settled down in the final stages of the race, it was pretty much. Game over from there. But I think it was described by commentary as a champion's drive. I think Martin Brundle said that, and I often feel like that's how races like this, when you have a Max Verstappen or a Lewis Hamilton, or we can dream Fernando Alonso winning a race, you often get that, don't you? That the cream rises to the top, as they say, in these sorts of conditions. And it's not a great surprise to see Max Verstappen winning in the wet. But yeah, just a very nice controlled drive. Like I say, one mistake, that's not the end of the world, is it? Ultimately, obviously, if he's the only one to make a mistake, that could be costly, but that wasn't the case. And I think I really enjoyed. I always enjoy watching Max Verstappen in the wet. I think it's always good fun. So yeah, great stuff. And I think. We said this. I think we said this last time. Stuart, I might have said this to somebody else. I've had a busy week. I've talked to lots of people, so who knows? But we've never really thought about a drivers' championship fight. It's the constructors where that could get interesting, and I think Max Verstappen has. I'm not going to crown him champion just yet, but he's taken a big step towards that today, thanks to Ferrari shitting the bed, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. But yeah, he's got a bit more control, a bit more comfortable than the 31 points it was before. He's got 194 to Leclerc's 138.
Yeah, I will also say he didn't. I said at the top, any of those top five could have won the race, but all of those top five got involved in sort of. I was going to say scrappy fights. I think not unreasonably scrappy fights considering the conditions, but they all sort of got into sort of bickering with each other, whereas Max seemed to be. This is a very level, mature head. Didn't seem to get involved in anything when he didn't necessarily need to. He waited when he needed to, which, when we think back a few years to how Max Verstappen was pre-World Championship, he was much more scrappy, much more likely to stick his nose in and get a bit desperate and much more often than he does now, get himself either or someone else in a bit of trouble. Whereas now, much more level-headed drive, and that's kind of the thing that kept him to have an overall best race pace, I think.
Wingcap says in chat he did get close to binning it in the Wall of Champions on lap 69. Was that the replay we saw where he sort of brushes the wall and brings up some of the advertising off the wall? That was that's what I mean about looking in control but fine margins in places like Canada. That's the sort of thing. I mean, Michael Schumacher, oh God, why am I doing this? Back in the 90s, I think it was 98 or 90, I think 98 would have been, had a race in Canada, was in complete control and then lost it and stuck it in the wall. So it's very easy to do that. So that's why I like the word controlled, is what I'm going to go with. Yes, Del, nice indeed. Yeah, Max, I've got nothing else to say on Max. I think it was a great drive today. I'm not going to sit here just waffling, throwing sentences out for no reason. So we'll hop on over to the other side of the garage. I'm sure you guys will tell us if we've missed anything. Yeah, Sergio Perez on the other side of the Red Bull garage. Yeah. Mm-hmm. First of all, I need to clear something up from yesterday. So what I need to do first. The press release came out and it was a 2-year contract extension. Christian Horner has since said that it is a 1 year plus 1 year with options for everybody. So that wasn't after the race. That's not just been decided. That came out before the race. So apologies yesterday, but that is what the press release said. So it is a 1+1 for Perez. But pretty miserable weekend. Stuart qualified 16th, knocked out in Q1. Again, that's the third time in 3 races that he's not made Q3. Second time in a row he's been knocked out in Q1. Started 16th, came together on the first lap with Pierre Gasly. I think that's one of those first lap slippery tracks incident. I don't think that needed an investigation. It didn't get one, so I think that was fair. But just made no progress. Still 16 on lap 24. So whether he had any sort of damage following contact with Gasly, I'll wait for the press release quotes to confirm that. I'm not making excuses, but that could be one of the reasons. P15 on lap 38 after passing Magnussen, so yay. And then crashed at turn 6, 7 chicane all on his own on lap 52 wide. A little bit like Sebastian Vettel did in 2011, sort of just a little bit wide on the damp patch, but he had a big spin and he went straight into the wall, smashed up his rear wing, and I think they're going to be investigated for driving a car in unsafe condition. He should have pulled over and not bothered with that, spewing debris all over the place. So that's never what the FIA want, but it was all Perez's mistake. Perez didn't have the pace yesterday, just a miserable weekend, and I keep saying it was not the way to celebrate a new contract. And going back to that championship thing, it's not about the drivers. Red Bull need him up there. Christian Horner said so afterwards. I was saying yesterday, and people were saying all week, he needs to be up there with Verstappen or they're going to be in trouble, because if Mercedes are now coming to play, we'll see. It could have been track specific. We'll find out in a couple of weeks' time. But if Mercedes are now coming to play, Red Bull desperately need Perez up there, otherwise they're going to be in trouble. So not great, not good enough. There's no excuses for him. It's just simply not good enough. I know that the field is closer now, but in that car, he should be right up there in the mix. That's just not acceptable from Perez.
Yeah, completely agree. And this is his third terrible qualifying in a row. And we said when he had his first one in Imola, like, oh, is this the start of the slump like he had last year? And we were joking then, but now is it? Are we going to have 5 or 6 bad qualifyings in a row? And the fact that he just couldn't seem to make his way through the field at all in a Red Bull is bizarre, whether he had damage or not. And the thing is, he can make excuses. You know, he was talking about the working tires yesterday and a bit of damage today, but it is always him, you know, and you've got it's and he is the sort of common denominator here, and you've got to sort of ask yourself, you know, is it him that's not forcing the team to dial the setup in correctly so he can use the tires? Is it, you know, he got involved with some damage probably because he was in 16th place on the grid and so on. There, you know, after a while you've got to ask some serious questions about Sergio Perez, and I have defended him quite a lot because I think he is, you know, normally a solid number 2 to a team that doesn't necessarily need, you know, a Carlos Sainz number 2 to bolster the numbers. But yeah, it's not the way to convince everyone that getting that new contract with Red Bull was the right move for him. And I hope he can get out of his head about this and start getting back to some sort of reasonable form now, because it's not looking great, is it? Especially when there are definitely some fairly decent drivers out there on the grid and beyond looking for a seat. So yeah, and bidding it all on his own. And I do wonder if he was trying not to cause a safety car by coming back on his own. But I guess we won't know. We'll see what the stewards say about that. Maybe during the stream, maybe not.
That's a good point, actually, with Verstappen out front. Was he out front at that point? He was, wasn't he? So maybe Red Bull thinking, let's not leave him there because that could be a safety car. Let's get him to cruise back, try not to drop too much debris on the line, and then get him in. But the stewards might not like that. I mean, that will not be anything to do with Verstappen. He'll not be in trouble for that. But I think you're looking at probably fine and a warning, maybe that sort of thing for these kinds of situations. We don't tend to see sporting penalties as such for them. So we'll see what they say. But yeah, no, it's just... We've defended him a lot, Stuart. Both of us have, and I've taken flack for defending him too much, but that's because of the argument that I'll always put that it's very, very difficult to be Max Verstappen's teammate. However, as mega as Max Verstappen is, and he will make a difference in that car, he's not making that level of difference. There shouldn't be that gap between your first driver and your second driver. So they need to... I think, again, the timing of the announcement is odd. It's not odd, but... it's surprising off the back of two early exits in qualifying. Maybe whether this was signed a few weeks ago, I don't know. But it's just, if I was in Red Bull's position, I'd have seen that and gone, maybe we just wait and just check first. Make sure that we're not on another one of these runs and then decide then. But these things in F1 can be done very quickly, or they can be done over a long period of time. It could be done ages ago, so I don't know. But I mean, look, I understand why Red Bull would do it from a marketing point of view, but we're talking about a race here, and that race was poor at best for Sergio Perez. It was absolutely horrific all weekend. So we could talk about how many caps he sells in Mexico until, you know, the cows come home. But that doesn't help him on race day, does it? And it doesn't help Red Bull in the championship. Unless that tops up the prize money they might lose if they end up second, maybe. I don't know. But it's not good enough in that car. It's as simple as that. And I did say yes to Stuart, and I wanted to put this to you as well, because I don't know if sometimes I'm making a point that doesn't make sense, and I often do. But we talk about the constructors, but even the drivers' championship, when you've got 2 McLarens, 2 Ferraris, and maybe 2 Mercedes up there, Max needs his teammate there to help him with the drivers' championship, because then those two teammates of those other teams can work together and take points from Max and hold him up or whatever, and you know, block him so he can't get through, or run him wide and try and help their teammate to take points off in the championship. So it's not just about the constructors. Red Bull need him up there to help Max as well, with the field being so tight.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, having your wingman and your rear gunner is particularly important, especially when you, as we've seen, your McLarens, your Mercedes, and your Ferraris, not today obviously, but whoever the challenging team is, they do tend to be pretty close together on the racetrack and able to make some team decisions, maybe splitting strategies, maybe holding people up, whatever needs to be done. They can work together to do whatever they can to make life trickier for Max, let's say. I mean, he does seem to respond pretty well to these things, but if you haven't got a Sergio Perez in there to do the same on a day when Ferrari are looking good, McLaren looking good, then it leaves him out on his own with much fewer options. So they do need someone there or thereabouts to be mixed up with that top 5 there. So definitely not good enough at the moment.
Purple Zebra says getting beaten by Max is one thing, getting out qualified by Logan Sargeant for the 6th time is another. And that's a fair point. I think that's a stat that a couple of you really, really bloody love in chat. That stat of how, Logan Sargeant can't out qualify Alex Albon, but he's out qualified for various reasons Sergio Perez 6 times. That's who does that reflect most poorly on? I think Sergio Perez. But yeah, not a great day for Sergio Perez. But it was a very good day for Lando Norris and McLaren. P2 for Lando and P5 for Aussie P. We'll get to Oscar in a minute. I'm a little bit disappointed, but you know, it's still great points. Norris did lead at one stage in the race. I think Pierre Lambiase said to Max Verstappen that's payback for Miami, because Norris got caught out a little bit by the safety car, didn't he, catching that, and that potentially cost him the lead, if not the challenge for the win today. But a great battling with George Russell late on as well. But it's the biggest thing for Lando Norris today, or the biggest thing in my notes for Lando Norris, and indeed for Oscar Piastri, is just the pace of that McLaren on a track that is, let's call it Jenson Button territory, not dry and not wet. That was absolutely unreal. They were multiple seconds quicker than other people. They were bringing themselves right into play. And it looked at one stage, once Norris had initially got into the lead and had that comfortable gap before the safety car, like he was going to absolutely cruise to the win. Absolutely cruise to it. But obviously the safety car and other things all kind of worked against him on that. So it didn't work out. And I expected McLaren to be quick, but I wasn't expecting them to be that much quicker with the track the way it was.
Oh, absolutely. And clearly the way that McLaren handled the changing conditions and the sort of evolution of the intermediates over that first 26 lap stint was much better than the cars around him. And I did kind of think, perhaps, even though the way the safety car unfolded allowed him to lose that lead, I did wonder if the same thing would happen all over again, as you know, because we had another burst of rain, and I wondered if, as the Inters evolved for a second time, I wondered if the pace would come back to McLaren in the same way and he'd cruise back up and take the lead again. It didn't. It didn't work out that way. The race unfolded slightly differently the second time around, but really interesting. Massive shame for him that he, in fact, was so fast that he kind of got to the pits too quickly when the safety car was called, and didn't make it in. I do wonder if, because he would have known the safety car would come out. It did get deployed before he reached the last chicane, and it was tight, but I do wonder if maybe another driver would have just dived in anyway, and hoped the team would jump on it and be ready. Because when we saw a couple of pit stops where the teams weren't ready, I've completely forgotten who it was, but oh yes, Magnussen jumped in to change his tires, and they weren't ready for him. We'll get to that later, I'm sure. But I don't know. I feel like it might have been worth a gamble for him to just come straight into the pits anyway, knowing what a time saving a safety car pit stop would have been, especially with the cars behind him. But otherwise, really good drive, really great pace. He could have won this race even after that. That second pit stop was very marginal. Like if the problem with this track is as it's drying out, is the pit exit doesn't dry, does it? So even if you've given yourself that's kind of overcut or undercut, you're still having to contend with tiptoeing your way around to turn 2, and that's where he ultimately lost the race to Max, I think.
Yeah, that was close. That was very, very close. Like you say, once you're out there on slick tyres on a wet track, you're not getting the power down like you would normally coming out of the pits. And we saw Yuki Tsunoda have a crash there last year or year before, coming out of the pits on tyres and getting it wrong. So it can go wrong. So you could just see him. You could just see in the car, couldn't you, Lando, the car squirreling away, and he's like, I just want to put the power down. Come on. Verstappen's there. We got to beat him, and it just didn't happen in the end. So, but it's still good P2. It's a shame that the pace didn't seem to be there when the track dried. They very much, possibly partly because of the fresher tyres late on for Mercedes, but also prior to that anyway, Mercedes were right with them in that fight. But I think it would have been maybe a closer battle had Mercedes not had new tyres, which was a smart move. Again, we'll get to that in a minute. But it's a shame the pace wasn't there on the dry tyres, but I don't know if that's set up or whether that's where McLaren just were this weekend on this track. It's hard to tell because we didn't get an awful lot of dry running this weekend, so it's difficult to know whether or not that is a race pace issue for Canada, but it's still big points in the bag. It closes up Lando to Charles Leclerc. There's about 7 points between them in the Drivers' Championship, and it gives McLaren an even bigger haul of points in third place to close up on Ferrari, had a disaster today. So it's all in all a really great day for Lando. I think he drove really, really well and deserves a lot of credit for that. Again, shame the pace wasn't there. A great tyre management as well by both drivers to look after those tyres in that first stint that will have helped with that pace on the drying track. And Oscar Piastri, he finished P5 in the end. Feels disappointing because he was sort of up there, wasn't he, in the mix for a podium, and I know he sort of was at the end. It's not like he's a million miles away from it, but he was sort of in that mix and challenging Lando almost, and it's just a shame that maybe he's fallen away again towards the end, as if there's any damage or anything like that after the contact with Russell. It didn't look like it, so it's unlikely, but just came alive as the track began to dry up. Pitted at the end of that 44 for dry tyres, and as soon as Gasly set the fastest first sector, I think he did that or first or second sector as he pitted, so it was perfect timing from McLaren and rejoined in front of Lewis Hamilton. There was that contact with George Russell. We'll talk about that now. We may as well while we're there. Russell coming down the straight, goes down the outside of Piastri. Piastri stays on the inside into that final chicane. Piastri is well alongside George Russell. George has got to turn in. Piastri's got to turn in. George has turned in. Pinch Piastri. Piastri's got nowhere to go. There's contact. It's not one of these situations where, you know, Oscar's front wing end plate was just alongside George Russell's rear wheel. He was well alongside, and I think that for me is 100% a race against. I would be very surprised if either driver get a penalty for that. Russell had to bail out. Oscar had nowhere to go. Bit of contact. They just raced on. I don't think that was. I think I'd be annoyed if that's a penalty for either driver, because that's racing. I want to see drivers take those chances, and I don't really see how it's not destroyed either driver's race, I guess is what I'm getting at. And equally, two drivers not willing to back out, final corner, wet, slippery track. Not for me.
Yeah, I agree. I completely think it's a racing incident. I think at the point they turned in and started to make their way around 14, I think it is, whatever, the right-hand turn into the chicane, they were both pretty level. Russell slightly ahead. I think they both had they both had right to be where they were. I don't think any of them had to yield. And I think just the problem is it's a very tricky, very tight chicane, and it's a bit wet. So, you know, to both go around there side by side without one of them having to bail out or hit each other, I think is just what's going to happen at that point. So yeah, definitely a racing incident. And I can't imagine what they'd say that would cause otherwise. To be honest, I think I know there are some Russell haters out there about some of his aggression on track, but I think he was further alongside Piastri than Piastri was alongside him, and I think he had every right to turn in. And I haven't seen an overhead if there is one, but I just don't think he sort of pinched him particularly in a way that was unavoidable. I don't think he sort of like closed the space too much on him, and in the same way that I think Oscar was always going to drift out towards him. So I think, yeah, racing incident is just sort of what happens. I'm glad Russell went for it. It was a brave move, and he made a similarly brave move on the inside later on. So yeah, I think it was fine. And as you say, no one crashed, no one lost position. Russell briefly lost position, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, and when I say that Russell, I agree with you. When I say Russell pinched, I don't mean he deliberately turned in to squeeze Piastri. He turned in the sense that it was that or go straight across the chicane. So he did a bit of both in the end. I suppose is the way to look at that. So no, and actually, Richie in chat says I would argue it isn't even a racing incident, just good hard racing. I think I'd agree with that. But I think the point is it'll come back as no further accident or action or racing incident from the stewards. So I just call it racing incident. But that's my way of saying, let him race. Like I say, if Oscar Piastri's got a front wing end fence up the inside of Russell and it clips him, it gives Russell a puncture, then that's a whole other conversation. But that was just good hard racing. So I'd be surprised if the stewards did anything about it. So we won't dwell on it. We'll keep an eye on it. Of course, the stewards may want to do something. They are looking at the Piastri-Russell incident. They're also, we'll talk about Daniel Ricciardo in a minute. They're also... or later, they're also talking to Octane Racing Group for a track invasion before the end of the race. So they'll be in trouble, I'd imagine, 12 penalty points and a fine maybe. And they are going to look at Sergio Perez as well. And car 22, which is Yuki Tsunoda, for National Anthem. So I assume he was late to that. So that'll be a ticking off and not much else. So we'll keep an eye on that one. But yeah, I'll let you know when they come in as we get to each driver. Hopefully we won't be waiting too long. But they're not major incidents and I don't think they change the result anyway. So it's not urgent. But anything you'd like to add on McLaren, Stuart, before I rock on to Mercedes? Because I've got loads to say about this.
No, nothing specific. Other than the fact that, and I guess this is a way to segue into Mercedes. I think it was a very exciting fact that of these top three teams, I don't think you can walk and say that this team was the best team this weekend. This was the team to beat. I think they were all at different times the fastest cars on track, which is quite refreshing, really, to see.
Exciting for the future, I think. Or I hope. You never know. So Mercedes then seems to have come alive this weekend. George Russell took pole position yesterday. He finished third today. He led from the start. Actually a good start in tricky conditions. Had good pace and built 2 seconds plus to Verstappen initially, but Max began coming back at him around lap 8. Off track at the final corner after being overtaken by Norris, which cost him some time, and that allowed Verstappen to slip through. The stewards did look at that for an unsafe rejoin. I believe that was the same incident, but nothing was doing there. From the long shot down the pit straight, that looked really close. From the overhead, it wasn't anywhere near really, so I think that was fine. Yeah. Pitted end of lap 45 in reaction to Piastri and Hamilton. Norris lost up the hairpin on lap 49, and so George was able to get close on exit and breezed past down the back straight with DRS of P2. Lap 51 had a very similar incident to the one he had last year. He hit the curb, sort of went deep into turn 8, hit the sausagey curb thing at turn 9, and then sort of lost loads of time there, and that allowed Norris back through. And then we got Toto on the radio. Focus, George. Focus, which was interesting. Contact with Piastri at the final corner. We talked about that one. Stewards looked at it, but I don't think I'll do anything about that one. Overtook Piastri anyway on lap 66 for P4 and got past Hamilton on lap 68 for P3. The Mercedes were allowed to continue racing right to the end now, which was good to see. But I'd imagine potentially nervy for Mercedes, but then they trust their drivers, so obviously not. But they were free to race, and that was good to see, and that got him a podium, his first of the season, and I think, it's Mercedes' first non-sprint podium of the season, which I know people get bored of this, but I'm going to say it anyway. If I go back 10 years, you'd never bloody believe that. if I said that. 9 races into the season. So there we go. Things have really changed over the years. But yeah, I think overall, I think George Russell seemed really disappointed post-race. I think he maybe doesn't feel he thinks it's a win on the table. Toto Wolff wasn't quite so sure. But I think overall this weekend, George Russell and Mercedes as a team can be very, very happy with the result. And now we have this wait. Ruby will be in chat somewhere. Have this wait now to find out if that was track specific or whether they're going to continue that in Spain in a couple of weeks' time, or they're going to go back to being 8th fastest or whatever. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. We've been here. There are a lot of Mercedes fans, I'm sure, in chat who will say this, and I'm not a Mercedes fan, but I'm going to say it anyway. We've had some false dawns over the last few years with Mercedes, so we'll hang fire on whether they're right in the mix now. But this weekend, they certainly were, Stuart, and they deserve a lot of praise for that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, as you say, we'll find out if this is something that carries on. But George particularly was saying the upgrades they brought to Monaco definitely gave them a boost. And here they were able to showcase it a little bit more. We're about to move into what would probably be Red Bull territory with a lot of, Spain being a lot of fast corners and things like that, where they're right at home. Announced this sort of fiddly stuff where they've struggled a bit more. But it is very encouraging that they're able to develop this car and move forward and appear to have closed up for the time being. And I think everyone agreed that in the dry, they did appear to probably have the fastest overall package. We didn't get to sort of necessarily see that across a race distance because it was mostly wet race and at least partly wet race for the entire duration. But it would have been interesting to see what would happen if we'd had an entire dry race. And I think that possibly a win could have been on the table there. Which, if so, they would have deserved. And I'm very impressed with what they've brought today. I think it was interesting when you when everyone was sort of gathering for the sort of top 3 interviews out of the car before they go to the cool down room, that Norris and Russell, 2nd and 3rd, both looked pretty disappointed. And for Russell to have come 3rd and be disappointed, I think is a very encouraging sign for where the team is right now. And McLaren as well, disappointed coming 2nd. I think it's really from where we were this time last year, from where we were, at the end of last year, I think this is a real turnaround for them. And you said, if you told me 10 years ago, we would have been shocked that Mercedes have only got 1 podium. I think a few races ago, we would have been shocked if you'd have told me Mercedes are going to get a podium by the time we got to Canada. So, it's interesting how fast these things change. Really interested to see where they go from here. And on that Russell Hamilton fight, I'm actually really glad also that they, in a race where quite a lot of people were asked to hold station, a lot of the cars were, either asked to hold station or asked to swap around, and it seemed to be very, very controlled because of how precarious things were. I was glad they were allowed to race and glad they did so in a hard but fair way. It's clear they were definitely going for it, but nothing terrible came from it, which I'm glad. That hasn't always happened with Hamilton and his teammates, especially around here.
Yeah, it's. I was watching it and I just thought purely selfish reasons. I was like, please don't collide. I can't deal with the chat tonight if these two collide. I can't do it. So please keep it clean. But no, good fair racing, and I really, really enjoyed that between those two. So I agree with you. I'm glad they're allowed to race because we want to see that between teammates, and it's not always the case. Understandably, they've got to think about the championship, but they're pretty comfortable on Aston Martin, aren't they, at the moment, and a long way off top 3. So there you go. I think great result for George Russell. Well, it was a great result for George Russell. Lewis Hamilton went from P7 to P4. Fastest lap as well, 1:14.856. So a bonus point there for Lewis. He pitted at the end of lap 43 for dry tyres to put on the mediums and was tucked up behind Piastri, so it was worth a go. Looked like the right call. I think it was the right call, and overtook Piastri for P3 on the run to the final corner on lap 65. But as much as I enjoyed the Russell-Hamilton battle, and as much as it was great to see Mercedes, coming in early to get the tyres on to take the fight to Piastri and then getting the move done, that was all great fun. What I really enjoyed was Hamilton versus Alonso on a wet track in the early stages of the race. They were battling hard, and that was fun. I love it when those two get together on track, not literally together, obviously. We don't want them crashing. But yeah, I always love it when those two are battling on track. And in those conditions, there was one point where Fernando Alonso had to save the car in a straight line as he tried to go around Lewis. It was it was great to watch. And he was racy today, was Lewis Hamilton. But I think going back to the point we're making about how far we've come and disappointment, Lewis Hamilton, his post-race interview on Sky or in the pen, really looked flat, really looked fed up, really did not look happy with the result. And I thought, that's P4, Lewis. You know, there have been times this season that you've been nowhere near that of the team, and you're not far off a podium. You're just behind your teammate. And then I sort of thought, why? And then it dawned on me, it's Lewis Hamilton. He's half a tenth off a podium. There was potentially a win on the table. I think he said that he thought the pace was there to win today. So he's probably looking at it and going, we could have won this, and I was only half a second off a podium. So that's why he's a bit flat about it. But I still think, when he looks back at this weekend, maybe in a week's time, he'll go, all right, I want to be on the podium, I want to be winning races, but P4, it's 12 points, 13 with the bonus point fastest lap. It's a good weekend, and a good weekend for the team. So, yeah, and Ruby's drops a super chat. Look at that for timing, Ruby. You're a star. Thank you very much for your support, Ruby. Says, good recovery from Lewis, but George cost himself a second place. I hope he does not become the team leader at Mert next year. They need a stronger leader. Thank you very much, Ruby, for your continued support. Good to see you this weekend. And I bet I imagine you're quite happy with P4, even though it's not a podium and not a win, but there we go. And it's a good point, actually. We didn't mention that we on George's mistakes today, which we mentioned the incident, but that probably did cost him P2 and maybe the challenge for the win. So maybe that's what Lewis is thinking. The team could have had 20, 25 points today rather than just the 15 for George in third place. But yeah, there were mistakes by George, but it's not a, with all due respect, not a massive surprise. I cringed as I said that. Oh no, now I'm in trouble.
Yeah, and there were a couple of mistakes, and some of them probably quite crucial because it ended up putting him in positions that he had to climb back from, or wasn't able to put in the pace that he wanted, especially right near the end and having to get past Lewis again. I think Lewis was probably a bit down because Russell overtook him near the end after he managed to get through. I think maybe, or he's strange when he's in like immediate reflective mode. Is Lewis, I think, normally after a race, but I think, considering where they were a couple of races ago, he was sort of accepting the fact that they were basically nowhere for Mercedes and we're just going to be struggling around for the bottom end of the points. I think he'll be happy and buoyed that this is a good place they can go from. And that battle with Alonso that went on for 15 laps by my count, which is, to be honest, it was a shame they passed each other in the pits. Because I was looking forward to them carrying that on. Those two were great fun. But I think positive weekend all around for Mercedes. I think positive for Hamilton. I think if the wind blew in the right direction at the right time for him, a win might have been on the cards, but it would have needed a little bit of luck. It would needed maybe positioning in the right place of the safety car or whatever. I think of those top five, he was probably maybe the least likely overall. He wasn't ever up there, but and of course they made a 3-stop strategy work. They took in those extra pit stops during the safety car to swap their hard tires around from hard to medium and medium to hard, which was a bit of a gamble, but they lost them a little bit of position, but worked out for them in the end. So yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're Lewis Hamilton, you're going to be disappointed, but I think if you're looking at the big picture, this is a big weekend for them.
Yeah, I agree. It's big. I mean, at the end of the day, it's, what is it? 15 for George, 13 for Lewis. It's 28 points. That's, they're on 124 now, so that's a big haul. 4 teams on 100 points already. Goodness me, this could be a great season in that little fight there. I just want to answer a couple of things in chat. So first of all, Moray says, literally everyone in the top 5 was making mistakes. Why is everyone singling out George? Don't worry, Moray, if you've just come in, we've covered that already. We've not forgotten that. Stuart mentioned it and I mentioned it as well, that lots of drivers are making mistakes today, including everyone in top 5. So we're not singling out George, don't worry, but it is another mistake from George, and George's was potentially a crucial one, as Ruby actually says in the chat. So that's why that gets more of a mention, really. Because, I mean, as you see in the picture there, Hamilton went off at one point at turn 1, so maybe that could have cost him P3 today. So, everyone was making mistakes, like you say, but George's was just quite a prominent one, I think it's fair to say. So that's why we've mentioned that one. I did see as well somebody mention the incident in the pit lane where Russell, I'm not going to give shout out because I'm going to lose it. Oh, there we go. Nick says it. George almost passed Max in the pits. Merc team was really on it this weekend. It was a tenth more, a tenth longer for Red Bull, or a tenth shorter for Mercedes, and George takes him in the pits there. So that was very close. That's a good point. But don't forget, if we miss anything, come back to us at Q&A later, and we'll talk about it if we have missed anything significant. We're going to move on to the other teams in just a moment. First things first, before we get there, though, YouTuber spiel. Please do drop a like on the stream. That'd be massively appreciated. 650 almost of you here, 118 likes. Let's get that well over 250, 300. That'd be fantastic today. And don't forget to subscribe if you are new as well. And if you weren't on the stream yesterday, just to let you know that I am doing work with Planet F1 at the moment on their YouTube channel to try and get that off the ground. So throughout June, I'm going to be very, very busy over there. So there is going to be content on the channel, but it is most likely, in fact, I say almost certainly, going to be race weekend content exclusively. So after this weekend on this channel, I may not be back until a week on Thursday for the preview for Spain, and then it's 3 weekends back to back to back, so lots of content between there. But so that's why things might be quiet again this week. But it's not. I'm not lazy. I've been busy. I'm not lounging on the sofa, not quite. Been busy with other things. So there we go. Just letting you know ahead of time, so you're not wondering where's Sean again. Disappeared, lazy sod. But actually, I am working elsewhere. So just to let you know there as well. And don't forget, you can support the stream as well with super chats and Streamlabs and PayPal and Patreon and all of that. Links in the description. We'll always read your super chats out, but we'll come to you later as well for Q&A as well. So there we go. Let's move on then to Aston Martin. Oh, yes. Now, I noticed they're quite scarce here, but I've got a lot of praise for them, so don't worry. Fernando Alonso finished in P6 today, and Lance Stroll P7, a prediction Sean got right, by the way, on Thursday. I said points for Lance Stroll at home. As I've already talked about that battle briefly between Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, really enjoyed that early doors. There was a great save, as I say, from Alonso on lap 7. That was after Hamilton had got it wrong at turn 1 and then cut the chicane. And as he came back on, Alonso had to go round him and was on the wet bit. And it's a really good save. So great stuff, as always, from Fernando Alonso in those situations. A bit of a weird one. I've got praise for them because they had good pace. They were in the mix early on in the wet conditions. As the track sort of dried out, though, Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, they obviously had too much pace and were going away. And they were sort of almost in a race of their own, really. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. Alonso comfortably 6th and Stroll pretty comfortably in P7, but it's a really nice haul of points. And Lance Stroll, where did he qualify? Where's my notes? Where is he qualified? 9th place, so a couple of places gained there. Alonso started 6th and finished 6th, but that doesn't tell the full story of his race at all. He had lots more action, so really happy. And it's good points for Aston, and I'm really pleased to see a good result. And like I said, that battle between Hamilton and Alonso was a lot of fun. But I'm going to be honest, Stuart, and you're gonna tell me something major that I've missed, but I don't recall seeing an awful lot of Lance Stroll, which is annoying.
Oh, did you miss the bit where he was waving on the coming back to the pit
did he
wave?
At
the end? Yeah, well, after the race. No, you're right. There wasn't a lot of him on track, and considering he's the homeboy, you'd have thought they'd at least given him a cursory bit of track action every now and again. But I guess there was quite a lot happening.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah.
Unusually. I mean, I noted we didn't get a race replay for over 5 laps, I think, because there was so much to look at. Normally, lap 2, they're straight on with the let's look at the race start replay. Yeah, but actually, very solid race. Good pace, gained a couple of positions, over the course of the race. I think they, judged their switch over to the hards pretty well. And other than that, basically just capitalized on a good solid qualifying, which he hasn't always been the best at. So yeah, I'm glad he could get a decent result both on Saturday and Sunday today. But yeah, otherwise didn't seem to be involved in the wars, unless chat is going to tell you something incredible right now.
There's always something I miss, and I'll be like, oh, you didn't mention Stroll's amazing backflip over Yuki Tsunoda or something. But yeah, thank you to Rixis, by the way, for the super chat. Says late joiners fee, great race and great outlook for bucket load still left. Looking forward to both of you rambling away on replay. Drive the day, Max Verstappen on the wets. Thank you very much, Rixis, for your continued support. Really appreciate that. K-Mag, what did I say?
Max Verstappen.
Oh, K-Mag, sorry. Drive the day, K-Mag on wets. I apologise. I've destroyed your super chat. That's it. End the stream. It's over. We're all done. I'll give you a love heart for later. So thank you very much for your support there, mate. Appreciate that as always. But I've not got much on Lance Stroll. Just a really great performance. What I do have though, just as I say that, my phone flashes up. Thank you very much, Aston Martin. I do have their press release. So Lance Stroll said he's super happy with the performance today. It was a tricky race, one of the trickiest I can remember, and the changing conditions kept us on our toes, but we handled it well. The first stint was really about managing tyres, especially as the track began to dry, and then we were able to pit for another set of intermediates on the safety car for the second round of rain. A second round of rain, I like that. We judged the switch to the hard compound well and kept it on track while others struggled. The characteristics of the circuit definitely suited our car, but we did a good job today. The characteristics of this circuit definitely suited our car. We did a good job to stay focused and make the most of the that makes sense. Sorry, the opportunities that came our way. And Fernando says, good race for the team and finishing in 6th and 7th positions is an extremely challenging race weekend is a good result. I think we can be more optimistic heading into Barcelona. Home Grand Prix, of course. Ended up being a lonely race for me despite the mixed weather conditions. Wasn't much we could do with the top 5 cars ahead as they were a little bit too fast today and there were not too many threats behind us. It was stressful with the changeable conditions. Stressful, says Fernando. And you had to avoid making a mistake and also switch tyres on at the right time or switch to tyres at the right time. So nothing there of any concern. Mike Crack says a busy home race in Montreal. That team... What is a home race? Nobody even knows. They're based I know a lot of teams are the same, but with Aston Martin, it feels a bit weird. They're based at Silverstone, so that's a home race, and then they're partly Canadian owned. That's a home race. They got a Mercedes engine. Come on. But they're going with home race in Montreal, so I suppose we'll have home race at Silverstone as well. That is, they can see that from their factory window, can't they? It's pretty close. Good strategic calls at the right time. Carried out solid pit stops, including a double stack. There you go. When we went to dry tyres, Lance and Fernando drove faultlessly in difficult conditions. I think that's a fair assessment there from Mike Crack. Just emphasise the difference between the two words there.
Careful. I don't think I remember seeing the double stack, so that's good. That's always a bit of a risk. So clearly made that work.
Yeah. Well, I love a double stack as well. It's always fun. Thank you to Sab Mariners fan as well, who's not from Grimsby, for your super chat. Says Williams is about to run the 2023 car if the drivers can't stop crashing. What a great race and good race for Sargeant until he did a Sargeant. Thank you very much, Sab Mariners fan, for your continued support there. I really appreciate that, and good to have you with us. And yeah, we'll get to Williams in a bit, but disappointing in what was actually quite a promising weekend for them, but we will get there. So yeah, well done to Aston Martin. Big points, and they're looking... they're not massively clear of RB, but then, tail end of points are going to be tough this season for teams at most races, so they might be pretty comfortable there, but I don't see them challenging ahead. I think Lawrence Stroll has said that they're optimistic that better things are to come, so, he's got to say that, hasn't he? So, hopefully the start of something for Aston Martin after what was an incredible year last year, and it's all sort of fallen away, really. Purple Zebra says on Mike Crack, continually Macy doesn't go with Michael. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Yeah, Michael Crack. It doesn't sound much better, but yeah.
Michael, Mickey, Mick. There's so many options.
Maybe he just loves the memes. I don't know. Daniel Ricciardo, RB, P8 for him today. Yuki Tsunoda, P14. Ricciardo did get a 5-second time penalty for jumping at the start. The FIA have issued a correction and a clarification. He still has a penalty, don't worry. That's not changing. But they said the car moved, car 3, Daniel Ricciardo moved after the 4-second light was illuminated and before the start signal was given, this being in breach of Article 48.1. Stuart acknowledged that the movement was very slight and no significant sporting advantage was gained and therefore imposed the least severe penalty applicable to such infringement. So that's a penalty because he moved a bit. There was definite movement. You could see it in that gap they're talking about, but also he seemed to be sort of rolling. They give you a little bit of room, don't they? You're a bit of wriggle room in there. You can move a little bit, but he was sort of creeping as well. So I wonder if there's part of that in there, but no advantage gain. It's difficult in those conditions anyway. So it was a 5-second penalty as per the regulations, but really good drive. Actually, great weekend from Daniel Ricciardo. P5 in qualifying, P8 today. Drove really, really well. Again, another driver I think who changed tyres at the right time when he needed to. Everything just seemed to be executed really, really well. So big weekend for Ricciardo when, off the back of Yuki Tsunoda being confirmed and Perez getting the seat at Red Bull for another year. I think that's a big weekend that he needed. So well done to Danny Rick for that one. Really good driving. And Yuki Tsunoda was actually driving just as well as Daniel Ricciardo. He was up in P7, looked pretty comfortable at one stage with some great driving and great management. He did 38 laps plus on the same set of inters he started on. That was I put 38 laps at the time I made the note, so it's at least 38 laps on the inters that he started on. So that is some fantastic management and driving. But he got deep at turn 8 late on, slid across the grass in a spin, and he lost his points paying position, nearly collected by K-Mag, by the way. Great driving from Magnussen to avoid that being a very nasty accident. So well done there from him. But yeah, disappointed for Tsunoda to lose out in the end, but he'd been driving well up to that point, and in these conditions, mistakes happen, and once you get on that grass, you're in trouble. So not really too harsh on Yuki there for that one. But I think overall, Stuart, I think they can be very, very happy, RB, with obviously maybe not Yuki's result, but the performance this weekend. Ricciardo seemed really comfortable and drove exceptionally well. Everything seems to be coming together there now. We talked, I think we mentioned this last time, we talked to testing about them being possibly a threat to the likes of Aston Martin this season. They seem to be starting to show that promise a little bit now. They were way off Aston Martin today, but they're sort of getting themselves back in the mix now.
Yeah, and they're definitely, well, I was going to say punching above their weight, punching above where we've been expecting them to be. They had a bit of a dire season last year, and yeah, I'm glad to see Ricciardo. I got myself a bit confused there. I was going to say he got his first points of the year, but maybe he got some points in a sprint somewhere, because he's definitely got more points than 3. So,
oh yes, he did get sprint points. I'll tell you.
Yeah, my problem is looking on Wikipedia where they don't show the sprints, but this is his first.
Miami, he got 4th place.
There you go.
Of course he did. Yeah, that great drive. Yeah, for the sprint.
Yes, and then immediately had a terrible Grand Prix.
Daniel Ricciardo.
Okay, but first Grand Prix points of the year for Ricciardo, which he really desperately needed. No idea where he'll be next year. To be honest, a bit of a shame he got that penalty as well, because I mean, who could say where he would have been? I think the 5-second penalty in relation to all the safety cars and tyre changes going on probably didn't have a massive overall effect on the race. But who can say? Maybe he would have beat Stroll. But yeah, I think I'll be, or whoever we're calling them. I noticed Alex, what's his face over on Channel 4 calling them V-carbs again. So, this team has no identity. It's horrible. I hope they change their name back next year. Yeah, and it's tricky to do.
It's right there. You probably own the rights to it. You have it.
It looks like it. You've put the old livery back on. It makes no sense. But yeah, good for them. Keep collecting points, and and especially on a tricky day like today, it really shows up the potential of Daniel Ricciardo. And if only he can do this constantly, he might get himself a seat next year.
Ruby says Ricciardo penalty was weird to me. Did he actually deserve it? I mean, I assume the transponder. I assume the transponder has triggered. But then they've changed it anyway, haven't they now? And if somebody appears to move, then even then they can issue a penalty. So if he's moved before the lights go out, then yeah, he absolutely deserves it. That's just the regulations, unfortunately. It's a bit like speeding in the pit lane. You know, you go, oh, but it was only 1 kilometre an hour over the speed limit. Yeah, but it's still a penalty. So it has to be a penalty in that situation for consistency, if nothing else, and my sanity.
I do get a lot of the sort of confusion and brow furrowing though, because the in one end the jump start thing seems to be a very much, you know, computer says yes, computer says no kind of thing. Whereas we saw, was it Saudi when we saw kind of the opposite thing, where we clearly saw someone moving before the lights went out, but the computer was like, no, it's fine. So they were like, sure, it's fine. I don't want to look at this with my eyeballs. And this is kind of seems to be an opposite situation where we couldn't see it with our eyeballs, but apparently he was moving to some degree. So yeah, I think that's just the way it goes. I'm afraid.
Parker says, correct me if I'm wrong, but he didn't move. Even Crofty and Martin commented on that. Was it something else? No, there's definite movement in the gap. I'll just read the decision again just to make sure I'm not getting the timings wrong here. But there is definite movement. How have they worded it? Moved after the 4-second light was illuminated and before the start signal was given. So there was definite movement there, and there was a bit of rolling as well. So there was, yeah, it does seem harsh in the sense that there's no advantage gained, but the stewards don't always look at that as the answer, do they, in these situations? So it is definitely Crofty and Martin. You're right. Crofty and Martin said that they hadn't seen it, but there was movement. So that's a shame for Danny Rick. But it's, you know, one of those things. And like you say, he did ultimately. I mean, it was 5.047 behind Stroll, so maybe could have challenged. But I think 8th was probably the maximum today. So well done to RB. Good to see him up there. So hopefully.
I will say,
More to
just
come.
on a brief tangent from the regularly scheduled program, I don't know if you, but just off the starts, I don't know if you watched the beginning of the Sky, um, pre-race stuff when they spoke to the official race starter,
Okay.
who operates the lights and all that. And I didn't realize, maybe I'm the only one who didn't realize this, but she manually decides when the lights go out. I always thought it was like a random
Oh,
amount of time between a minimum and maximum, but apparently she randomly chooses herself when they're going to go out, which is very interesting. I thought, unless I could. So yeah, a little factoid there.
no, I know, I agree. I thought it was all computers. I thought it like an algorithm decided, let's go now. But it is quite nice to know Hughes up there, so she could sort of stand there with her finger up in the air and sort of go, oh, if she wanted to really wind up the drivers on the grid. Not quite yet, not quite. You wait, Daniel Ricciardo, you wait. That's good. I like that. It's good info, Stuart. I did miss that, unfortunately, but I've learned something, and that's every day's a school day. Alpine have 5 points, Stuart, in total. I think we talked earlier this season, we'd be surprised if they got 1. But they've got 5 points. Pierre Gasly today, P9. Esteban Ocon, P10. Esteban Ocon, by the way, starting in last place. Fantastic drive. I know we had a lot of retirements, but coming through the field, keeping his nose clean as he needed to this weekend. Some good driving. Everything seemed to work for them today, Alpine, which is great. And he got the Ocon side, and he got a point at the end. So well done to him. And Pierre Gasly was involved in that incident with Sergio Perez at the start. Again, just one of those first time. I think Perez tags his right rear, doesn't he, a little bit, and slippery surface. There's only one way that's going to go. So both were able to continue, and Gasly had some good pace, not too much damage there. No investigation, as I said earlier, but that's fair enough. Pitted for hards on lap 40, and then was off the track at the pit exit, but did rejoin. So he was one of the first, I think. Possibly the first, actually, to go on the hards, other than Leclerc, after the second rain shower. I believe that was the case with Pierre Gasly. So really good for Alpine today. It's 3 points doesn't sound big, but 3 points is massive to them in that battle back there. It moves them up a place in the championship as well. So absolutely great stuff from Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly today. And I'm hoping that this is again a bit like Aston Martin, the start of a turnaround. Let's see how we go. But good stuff. I've got. Can you tell I've got bugger all in my in my notes for Alpine, Stuart? Yeah, great stuff from Alpine. They're amazing. Love them. Practically won.
Yeah, I've got the Esteban Ocon being absolutely furious, but apart from that,
Was he furious at?
Well, on lap, possibly not on lap 69, possibly on lap 68, but Alpine told him to let Gasly past so he could have a go at taking Ricciardo, and Ocon was had a big argument with them over the radio, and eventually relented on turn 8 of lap 69. Whereby, of course, there was no time left for Gasly to have a go at Ricciardo, and he just thinks it's the team being snotty at him because they let him go of him, and Gasly's their main guy. I think the rest of the season is going to be a bit of bad blood between them for the team. But yeah, he had a bit of a go in the press pen when they asked him about it, and he said, "I've done my job today, but the team hasn't." So, pretty annoyed about that. So I would say a turbulent event for French people all round, which is, if you know, you know.
It's quite. It's spicy is a good word for how that's going to get, but it's also going to be quite spicy next year when Esteban Ocon sat in a Haas and Pierre Gasly's in an Alpine. But yeah. I don't think I know they've had their past problems, but I don't think those two as drivers, apart from that coming together in Monaco, have really been at each other's throats as a lot of people thought they would. So I don't think there's necessarily bad blood between those two. But like you say, maybe between him and the team, there might be a little bit now. Because although the official line is very much, oh, no, this decision was taken before Monaco, that does reek to me as the straw that broke the camel's back. And I can imagine there were a few meetings and things got a bit tetchy. And yeah, it's coming to an end. But, onwards and, well, I guess sideways for Ocon next year. He's going to Haas. Onwards and sideways for Esteban Ocon. He'll still be on the grid, I'm pretty sure of that, alongside Ollie Behrman. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah, a good weekend for Alpine in terms of points. And it's good that, like I say, no drama between the drivers, apart from, as you say there, the comments at the end. So I'll be interested to see if there's any response from Alpine on that one. But do you think there's a risk Stuart, just so we say something more on Alpine. I don't like doing speculation too much when we're doing the actual run through, but we'll do it anyway. But do you think there's a risk that if things do get a bit tetchy and there's a bit more, if the drivers do at any point in the season come together again, or he makes comments in the press the team aren't happy with, that he could find himself sidelined a little bit earlier? And that can get expensive with contracts and things, can't it? So maybe not, but just purely speculating there, given how things were after Monaco, allegedly.
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure. I don't, and it kind of depends how eager they are to maybe get a junior driver in that car for at least a couple of races or something. But I think they'll stick it out. I think there might be a lot of talks behind closed doors about how to be diplomatic and work for the good of the team for the rest of the season, because I think that's, considering the turnaround this team has been doing and the ability they now have to be grabbing points on the regular compared to where they were at the beginning when they're about 4 tons overweight and dragging around at the back. I think they just need both of those drivers bringing home points as often as possible and not getting involved in fights with each other and stuff. I do think perhaps it would have been a good gesture to get Gasly to get the position back if he didn't overtake Ricciardo, maybe. I think that seems to be quite standard, but I think if we're honest, at this point, where they are in the Drivers' Championship doesn't really matter. So if whichever way around they're finishing 9th and 10th isn't that big a deal, unless it's for your own sort of, for a driver ego, and if a team decides that actually keeping a driver on side by giving them position back is better for overall harmony. Yeah, there's that kind of diplomatic side to it. So I don't know. I think everyone probably could be handling themselves a little bit better at this point. So we'll see how they do it. But I think they'll probably hold on to Ocon for the rest of the season.
It's definitely not amicable, is it? They've said it's a joint decision, but it's definitely not amicable. It's going to get quite touchy, but Wish V, thank you very much in chat, says, hey Sean, love your channel, thank you very much. Says, I'm going to destroy this and I get some clarity now. I follow, is it Kim Illman or Kym Illman, the F1 photographer? I'm sure someone will let me know. And he said that Ocon is going to Mercedes. That's an interesting call. That link's been there for a bit of the season, hasn't it? Because he was a Mercedes junior. I think Mercedes still have some say in, or not necessarily say, but they're still involved with him. So that's possible. But I think Martin Brundle's the one that set me on a Haas thing, because he said on Saturday or Friday that he's heard that Ocon will be in the Haas next year. So we've got some conflicting information. So it is Kim. I thought it might be Kim, but yeah, I didn't want to just assume. But yeah, no. So there is some conflicting info there, but that's what I love about silly season. So Haas or Mercedes, if he could perform like this consistently in that Alpine, then maybe the Mercedes door is open, but I would be surprised if that happens. If I can't help but feel if Mercedes were looking for somebody other than Kimi Antonelli, Sainz would be in that car next year. I think he would have been up on the list over Ocon. I don't know, but we'll see. I'm going to stick with Haas for now, but I hope we get some surprises in this driving market, because as I said yesterday, this has been the least silly, oh my God, we've got a silly season that we've ever had, I think. Because I thought we could get a lot of fun, but it's already happened that way. Thank you as well to Ruby for another super chat. Says, Ocon saying I'm too nice. Too nice is funny, lol. Thank you very much, Ruby. I see I like Esteban Ocon. I know I'm in the minority and I don't care. I do like him, so there we go. Who else do we have? What we got? Let's do Haas as well while we're on these drivers here. Quite a few notes here.
Mm-hmm.
There was a point, Stuart, where I wondered if we might be looking at a very surprise result today, actually. Both of the Haas drivers started on the wets, and the rain came down fairly hard early on. And they absolutely, particularly Kevin Magnussen, just cruised through the pack. He was P4 at one point. Great call from the team, but the rain eased and the track began to dry, and of course then inevitably the pace fell off because they weren't on the inters. Magnussen was P4 by the end of lap 4, pitted at the end of lap 7 for inters, but tyres weren't ready. FFS, I've written. 8.6 second stop, so not disastrous, but you've done all that good work early on. You've kind of undone some of that now, but he did rejoin in P12, so I think I liked, was it net gain? I think that Martin Brundle referred it as, so it's still a net gain, so that's something. He went off track on lap 60 at turn 8 and rejoined the wrong side of the bollard, but grass was so wet he was never going to make that, so I'd be surprised if the stewards did anything about it. I don't think they did anyway, so no worries there. And Nico Hulkenberg was P8 by the end of lap 4, so Magnussen went from 14th to 4th. Oh, nice. And Hulkenberg went from 18th to 8th. Nice, you all gained 10 positions. Said on the radio to try and run the wets until it's time to change to dries. Lap 10, he was nearly 4 seconds off the lead pace and a second slower than those behind him. To give you an idea as how much time he was losing, Magnussen, who pitted and had a slow stop, was within a couple of seconds of Hülkenberg by about lap 12. So it all sort of didn't work. Pitted for instance on lap 13, and all that hard work again was not wasted, but partially undone. And, you know, the usual Martin Brundle line, right tyre, right time, and all that jazz, and put the mediums on lap 41 as well. So really great call at the start. Love seeing that from teams at the back. I've always enjoyed that. Stick on the tyres that are a gamble. You're never going to go dries. Go for the wets. The rain came. They made up places, but then kind of shot themselves in the foot a bit, Stuart, with pit stops and bad timing of changing tyres. But I sort of get what Hülkenberg was thinking. The track was drying quite quickly. Let's try and make the best of this now and stretch this to dries, but it was just never going to happen, was it? And it's a shame. But, I mean, 11th and 12th is still a good result. It's just, it looked at one point in this race like they were going to get a mega result, and it didn't really happen.
Yeah, and it was definitely the right call to make. It was bold. It was definitely a gamble. Could have been quite a few more positions for Magnussen if the pit stop had gone more smoothly and they're more ready for him. It could have gone a lot better if there'd been a safety car, maybe, while the track was still, you know, if on lap 5, maybe there'd been a bit of an accident and while the track was still pretty treacherous, Magnussen would have been quids in there, I think, because I think a few people might have stopped maybe, or at least he could have got a fairly cheap pit stop in at that time and not lost so many positions. Yeah, Hülkenberg was interesting. At the time, he was sort of going at a snail's pace. I did wonder if he was sort of trying to create a bit of a queue to allow Magnussen to get on the back of that train and not lose so many positions. Because also, you know, had a safety car appeared at the right time, you know, maybe Haas wouldn't have had to stop again while the others did. Maybe it would have been a pit stop in hand, because even though, as you said, he dropped to 12th with a pit stop over everybody else, which as it turned out, they did both end up stopping with the rest of the field anyway, so they kind of did make an extra pit stop. But it might not have been that way with a safety car if the rain had come in different ways. So yeah, I think taking the big gamble was totally worth it, and they gained a lot of positions either way. Shame they didn't get into the points, but that's the way the dice rolls sometimes. I think they could be proud with where their efforts, and they actually put on a pretty racy performance throughout the whole 70 laps. So I think they can go away fairly happy with what they put out there today.
Yeah, I was looking for a press release, but Pedder in chat has just said that Nico couldn't pit because his tyres were mixed with Kevin's for a while after Kevin stopped. So the same mistake actually cost both drivers. So I was just having a quick look through to see if there's anything the team explaining any of that. So, but Ayo Komatsu, trying to find, where are you? You've gone. There we go. Pretty frustrating day. I think we made the right choice putting both drivers on the wet tyres. That was good. Kevin and Nico did a very good job. Made lots of positions up. Pitted at the right time for Kevin, only for our pit stop issues to undo our gains, which is frustrating. In terms of pace with Kevin wants to go on the slicks early. Nico's timing was absolutely perfect. That was on the slick, sorry. So there's no mention there of mixed tyres. I'm not saying Pedder's wrong, by the way. I'm just trying to see if there's an official line on it. But there's nothing there from Ayo Komatsu. Hülkenberg says no. First 10 laps went really well, but then the track dried out, so all the work came undone again. But we knew about the scenario. I think it was a clean race, no mistakes. Bit unlucky with one of the safety cars. Feel like we missed out at the end. It was good to wait a bit longer for the slicks because it was difficult in the first sets to keep on track. But yeah, so no official line from the press release. That doesn't mean it's not true. Again, I'm just saying. But that, you know, if they've mixed up sets, then obviously that's gonna have an impact, isn't it? You can't come in and put mixed sets on, so that's fair enough. But yeah, just to let you know, there's nothing on the official line there, but that could have happened. I don't know. It may well have happened. It could have been something missing commentary. It was typing all my other notes about Haas. But yeah, it's 11th and 12th. Nah, it's disappointing not to score points. They seem like they may have, disappointed they may have missed out on some points today. But I still think, they were in the mix, weren't they? Hülkenberg was half a second off P10. Magnussen was only another half second further back. So they were in that battle with Gasly and Ocon for the final points across the line. It was really close. So one of those situations where, you know, a second in a pit stop or a slightly better time safety car and it swings the other way, doesn't it? So Haas were there, and that's where they need to be, and they are one of the teams that made the big steps this season. So that was yeah, that's all I've got on Haas. Perez just clarified something as well, sorry. They were ready for Nico and Kevin came in, so they had to swap the tyres. Okay, as they are not allowed to put the wrong car. Yeah, so it was that Nico was going to come in. They got the tyres ready for him, but then Kevin came in. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Pedro. I appreciate the info there. So there you go. There's a little bit more info on Haas there. Anything else on Haas, Stuart? Sorry, before I was trying to do 3 things there at once, and it didn't work. Surprisingly,
juggled them gracefully. No, I think you covered it all. I'm looking forward to the vast amount that you have to say on Sauber.
Well, on that note,
I can't wait.
Let's get straight into the others then. The rest, I'm going to fly through Sauber and Williams, or Sauber first, and then we'll do Ferrari, and then a few words on Williams. But Sauber, Bottas, he started from the pit lane, as did Zhou Guanyu. They decided to go for a wet setup, which I think made a lot of sense given that the track was wet. So that was a good call. They were pretty far back anyway, so why not? Bottas, he went for the mediums on lap 42, at the end of lap 42, and Zhou Guanyu, brace yourself, take a second, had a bad pit stop. I know, it's unheard of at Sauber. Unheard of. Had a bad pit stop. Was there for quite a while. In fact, I think at one point the leaders came in, pitted, and went out, and Zhou was then just leaving his pit box in the background. So he was there for quite a while. That compromised whatever brilliant race I'm sure he wasn't having, because Sauber were kind of, once you put a wet setup on the car, that's great. You're going to do really well when it's wet, but then when it dries out, you're going to lose some of that pace, aren't you? So they were sort of nowhere really, and that's all my notes. Bottas finished 13th, Zhou 15th and a lap down. Bottas was 9 seconds behind Magnussen ahead, so Sauber were kind of in their own little area. It does feel in recent weeks, so I'll say this, it does feel in recent weeks like Sauber now are very much on pace. P10 feels that way.
Yeah, that's the impression I'm getting at the moment, and I don't know if they're sort of waiting for this kind of big switch over to Audi. I'm expecting something a bit better next year as we sort of transition. But yeah, it's a funny old time for them because they're a funny team, because sometimes they have some really solid years, or at least starts of the years, and have some really impressive pace. And this year just not so much, and their development rate is not as fast as teams around them, so they are just sort of pootling around at the back, not in the dramatic way that sometimes we get from a P10 or a bottom of the pile team. They're sort of in amongst it a bit, but not in any kind of dramatic way. So yeah, I think they must be a little bit disappointed at the moment and not really sure what they're supposed to be doing this year, because they clearly don't seem to be able to be putting as much effort into developing that car. Having said that, they both finished the race, and in finishing the race when others had chaos around them, they did both gain 4 positions off where they started. So that goes to show on a day like this, you do have to just be there and be in it, and maybe something will come to you if all around you lose their heads. So that's what they had. Had more people gone off, had a bad pit stop, crashed, whatever. They may have snuck a little point out, but not today, unfortunately.
No, I mean, to be fair, that is a very fair point. In these kinds of conditions, you just need to, or just need to get your car to the end, don't you? That's the goal. And like you say, something swings another way, slightly better time safety car, or I don't know, Tsunoda's incident does result in Magnussen collecting him, and it's a little earlier in the race. These things, they add up, don't they? And then maybe you nick a point. So that's maybe the best way to sum that up. But again, sorry to Sauber fans. I feel like we've never got anything to say about them, but that's because sometimes I don't really do an awful lot, if we're being quite frank about it. So there we go. Have I got all the super chats before I do this next part? Yes, I have. That's fine. I just wanted to double check. So with Sauber out of the way.
Oh dear. Well,
should we talk about Ferrari?
And
boy,
they had such a good race last time.
Yeah, it's what I don't know what's happened. Anyway, so Leclerc, lap 5, had engine issues, told to keep pushing. Great stuff when you got an engine issue. Losing half a second down the straight. Said it was impossible to overtake with the issue. Did pit on the end of lap 29 to put hard tyres on. Very slow stop, about 24 seconds. So possibly stalled, I thought, but apparently he was resetting things. So got the engine issue sorted. We think we've fixed the engine issue, they said, on lap 30, as Charles Leclerc struggles to keep the car on track on hard tyres in the rain. I don't think his concern now was, let's at least the engine's fixed. I can't keep the car in a straight line, but at least the engine's fixed. Absolutely awful call on the hard tyres. I don't know what. I don't know. It's Ferrari. We have these moments from time to time, and I think even with Vasseur coming in now, sorting things out to a point, I think we're still going to have these strategy moments. Of course we are, but you've got every other team on the grid saying rain coming, rain coming, rain coming. Rain's about to be here. Rain's on its way, and Ferrari go, hey, hard tyres. So, what? Are you just drawing lots out of a stupid deck of cards or something? Goodness me. So had no pace at all, no heat in the tyres. As Martin Brundle explained, the slower you go, the less heat. It's a vicious circle. And then pitted at the end of lap 31 for Inters, and then pitted to retire on lap 42. I'll try that again. So, not great. And Carlos Sainz, lap 32, tagged the back of Bottas at the hairpin. That damaged his front wing end plate. Then lap 53, crashed with Albon at turn 6-7. As it turns out, he'd sort of done a Perez, gone a bit wide, caught the damp line, then ended up in a spin. As he spun round, he walloped Alex Albon, and he retired in the pits. So, all in all, a really positive day for Ferrari, because they now know that slick tyres don't work on a wet track in the rain. There you go. That's Sean's attempt at some optimism there. You learn. It's not like they're new to the sport. They've not been around for 70 odd years, but here we are. They're my team. I'm allowed to be mean about them. They've annoyed me this weekend, and you should have heard me in the watch long yesterday, Stuart. A few F-bombs were dropped.
Oh boy, I bet. Yes, not a good weekend all round, considering they didn't get into Q3 after getting a double podium. Just didn't seem to have it together here at all. And then to have, engine problems happen. They shouldn't, but they do. You cut, once the things in there and stuff. Leclerc said he was losing 1.2 seconds a lap just on the straights, and he was having to do engine adjustments on the steering wheel 10 times a lap, which isn't great, I must say. I did enjoy the team radio call telling him the engine was fixed on the lap that he had his hard tires on. So it's like, great, perfect. If only I had any grip. I think their plan was they were so far down and so far out of it that the only thing left they had was a hero's move of going onto the hard tires and just praying that for some reason the track had become a dry tire track while no one was looking, and they'd be like 6 seconds a lap faster than everyone else somehow. It wasn't to be. And I think he was probably right to retire because he was 18 seconds down on Verstappen on the dry. So just a poor weekend. And actually, I am surprised because I think the current Ferrari, the Vasseur Ferrari, is not so much a team that does this kind of thing anymore. That seems like it's never participated in a Grand Prix in its life, which sometimes old Ferrari did. Their strategy seemed to be written on the back of fag packets. Everything was just sort of like a little bit chaotic. And yet I was starting to believe that this was a team that seemed to have themselves...
Never start to believe with Ferrari, never. You set yourself up with disappointment.
And maybe they are. Maybe this is a blip. Maybe this was just a track that got the better of them and their engines. But you could have hoped that at least Sainz would have got them a point. You could have hoped that Sainz would have put on the brakes when he started spinning, maybe, instead of just drifting out across the track and into Albon. There's a lot of things we could have hoped, but I guess let's hope they get it all out of their system this weekend and get back to normality, because we were just talking about them starting a championship challenge. Like, is it happening? Are Red Bull plateauing? Are Ferrari and and McLaren and so on the ascendancy. Is this it? And they got within 30 points, as you said, and now it's all kind of falling away again. So yes, I'm hoping this is a one-off for them because I really want them to be in among it. And we can't be having them Ferrariing this weekend after weekend. Not when they've whetted their appetites like this, for sure.
I did put at the top of my notes that I wanted to take a moment in the stream just to remember the Ferrari title challenge, May 26th to June 9th. It's a nice moment as a Ferrari fan just to go to bed at night and go, do you know what, we've got a shot here, and then forget the past however many years it's been now since 2008 and go, oh no, sorry, it's still Ferrari. So there you go. You can all rip or F's in chat, whatever the kids say these days, for Ferrari's title challenge. Hey, you never know. 3 races on the bounce. Yeah, not going to happen. So, thank you to Pascal for the super chat. Says, great race today. As far as Sauber is concerned, I am worried about the current form. Barcelona will be brutal as it will expose the weaknesses. Thank you very much, Pascal. Sorry that your team have had a bad weekend, but appreciate the support as well. Ruby, I've got a bone to pick with Ruby, and I'm going to do it now. Ruby says, someone say a joke. Ferrari again. Sorry, Sean. Ruby likes to banter me on Ferrari. I like to give Ruby banter back. But I'm just going to point this out to you, Ruby. Next year, you've got to suffer this because your man, Lewis Hamilton, is going there, and you'll be coming to these streams and you'll be like, Sean, how have you coped with this for so many years? How have you not gone insane? So I'm looking forward to that banter switching up next year. And thank you as well to Rixis for another super chat. Says, by the way, we need new section, quote of the week. Mr. Russell gets it with holy moly. Yes, that's been the phrase of the weekend. Thank you for all your super chats. Massively appreciate the support as always. And you can pop your own if you want to in the description. All the links down there. If you don't want to, no worries at all. We're going to do a Q&A very, very shortly. A shortish Q&A tonight because it's getting on a bit here in the UK. I've got nothing else to say about Ferrari. I mean, the Sainz incident with Albon, it's the same mistake Perez has made. He's gone into a spin. He's come back across the track. Albon's been collected. Not an awful lot Albon can do to avoid that in those conditions. Sainz, not a lot he can do to not be spinning in that, apart from not spinning in the first place. That's just one of those things. I don't think there's any... I always make sure I say there's no blame. Some people think there should be a penalty for everything in F1 for some reason, but there's no penalties there to be dished out. That's just one of those things, and just frustrating for Carlos Sainz. But I don't think, Stuart... Sainz was sort of in a battle with some of those at the fringes of the points for a while, but really, it never looked at any stage in that race, even pre whatever was going on with the tyres with Leclerc. I know he had his engine issues, but it never looked at any point like either of them were about to start cruising through the field, did it? They just very much looked like this weekend, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth or seventh best team.
It was quite astonishing how they just were not present at all this weekend, and they just seemed completely lost. I think Sainz was 10th and Albon 11th when they hit each other, as I'm going to call it, even though that's
something like that. Yeah.
I'm not sure where they were on pit stops at that point, but yeah, they weren't making their way through the field at all. It wasn't like they figured anything out from any of their running during the weekend, and had just kind of accepted where they were. Very, very strange all round for them, to be honest. I think even if this is a blip, I think this will be alarming to them, that they're not knowing they could turn up at any weekend and suddenly the car will just not be beneath them for whatever reason. But maybe this is, for some reason, Montreal is to Ferrari what Singapore was to Red Bull last year. Just a weird bogey track where it didn't work for how their car's designed.
Maybe that's why Lewis was so downbeat. He leaves Monaco. He's like, I'm going to Ferrari. Oh shit! maybe that's why he was so downbeat today. I don't know. But yeah, no, not great. I'm very frustrated. But it's 38 years old. I've been watching Ferrari for over 3 decades. I've watched them win titles over and over again with my hero, Michael Schumacher. Kimi Räikkönen pick up the baton in 2007 and take the title there, and the Constructors in 2008. But that was the last one. So I'm pretty used now to to suffering through this. So it's not, yeah, anyway, leave me alone, everybody. Leave me alone. Last but by, no, not least, because I think they did all right this weekend, Williams, overall. The result not. Alex Albon, Logan Sargeant both retired. Albon started 10th, Sargeant started 13th. I said yesterday, Stuart, that Sargeant was, in qualifying yesterday, one of my drivers of the day, because I think there was a moment where he just looked like he might finally out-qualify Alex Albon. Didn't quite do, but I thought 13th place was really good. So he's had I think that's a good weekend for Logan Sargeant up to what happened in the race, obviously. But Albon overtook Leclerc on lap 20 for P9, so that was a good move there. Looking good for points. Awesome move as well. A double overtake, I think, more or less, wasn't it, on Ricciardo and Ocon on the run to the final chicane, lap 31, kind of goes past, like almost like the video game, sort of goes past Ricciardo on the left, then tucks in to go past Ocon on the right. Really good stuff. So that's good from Albon. And then was out after that crash with Sainz, like I say, turn 6 and 7, collected by a spinning Sainz. Not a lot Albon could do. Just wrong place, wrong time, unfortunately. So a bit gutting, because I think he was on for a point or two today. And Logan Sargeant, lap 6, went off at turn 6, reversed and rejoined. So I thought, hey up, don't worry, he's sorted, and then dropped it on the exit of turn 4, hit the wall, caused damage and stopped in awkward spots. That brought out the first safety car. A lot of people are going to talk about, Logan Sargeant again, but these conditions, I'll give every single driver, no matter how crap a lot of people think they are, I'll give every single driver a bit of leeway in conditions like these, because all it takes is one, as we saw with Perez and Sainz, you only have to be a little bit offline and you're in trouble. So, far better and far more experienced drivers than Logan Sargeant were making mistakes and crashing today. So I'm not going to go hard on him on that one. That's just a symptom of or a consequence of the conditions. But I think overall, Sargeant will be happy with up until crashing in the race. And I think Alex Albon will be happy with his performance, but gutted that he's not got anything out of it, because it did look like they were on for points today, Williams. But just the way it goes, Stuart, when it rains, it happens sometimes, doesn't it? Frustrating.
Yeah, very unfortunate. Both of them victims to the weather. But Albon's overtake may well go down as one of the best overtakes of the year. I think it seemed so well judged on both cars in a situation where it could have ended in absolute disaster for any one of them. I was very, very impressed with that, and I'm glad he got to pull that off. And yeah, I think you're right. I think points could have been on the cards here, and it goes back to what we were saying about Sauber. With you've got to be in it to, well, if not to win it, but you've got to be in it to get something out of it at the end. And if he'd have just managed to hold on, he probably would have been in the top 10 one way or another. So, very frustrating weekend for them. Interesting, actually, that I believe Williams are very, very aggressively courting Carlos Sainz.
Very aggressively.
Openly, almost embarrassingly. It's like getting down on one knee in the middle of the school cafeteria, kind of, will you take me to prom, kind of embarrassing.
So you're much nicer about them, your analogy. I was going to say, if you open James Vowles' boot, the boot of his car, you'll probably find that Carlos Sainz is tied up and gagged in the back of it. We have very different minds.
Well, pick your metaphor to your own tastes. But yeah, very interesting that Carlos Sainz's response was to take one of their cars out. I don't think that's a no, but we'll see.
I think Ralf Schumacher said to Sky Germany, I read on Twitter, that he'd said that Sainz has just taken out his teammate for next year. So I think it does feel like this silly season is already coming to a close. It looks like, for whatever reason, despite the fact that it feels to me like they're really rushing him too quickly, Antonelli's going to be in that Mercedes unless something goes wrong. It sounds like Ocon's going to Haas, or as we've heard already, the rumours are all over the place, but could be going to Haas. It's looking like Sainz to Williams. Alpine favourite, I think, there is Gasly and Doohan. RB will be Ricciardo or Lawson, probably Ricciardo. Wrong decision, but probably Ricciardo. Aston Martin, they might make a change, but that's probably going to be Stroll. Let's put it that way. The only one I don't know, Stuart, is Audi or Sauber. So many teams, so many drivers have been linked to that seat, but are they in a position now with Hulkenberg going? They may have to stick with, I said this yesterday, so I'll put it to you actually very quickly while we didn't say a lot about Sauber, why not? they're coming to a point here where I think they're going to have to make a decision between Bottas and Zhou to stay with them for next year, unless they do go for Ricciardo if Lawson gets the seat at RB, maybe. I don't know. But to me, they're going to have to make a call between do they want to capitalise on the Finnish market or do they want to capitalise on the Chinese market? Because, nobody seems to want to go there. Which today's performance, you can't blame them, actually.
Yeah, I mean, there is that, but it also does seem just a tiny bit mad when you know it's about to become Audi and you could be cut off something pretty big, even if it. I was going to say even if it doesn't really have this kind of immediate glut of results, because obviously Audi buying Sauber isn't going to turn it into a magical race winning team overnight. But it, being part of building that team up. And hopefully seeing some of the fruits of that, I think, would be quite special. We've seen what Mercedes did, albeit, I mean, they bought Brawn, which was a championship-winning team, but Brawn was a very
unique,
scant bits and pieces team at the time. It wasn't like someone had bought Ferrari, even though you know what I mean. It was they sort of won a championship in unique circumstances by being in the right place at the right time, but they were sort of like, all the cupboards were bare by the time they got there. So yeah, if I was a driver with the spirit of adventure in me, I would definitely be eyeing up that Audi seat. Even though it's not an Audi seat next year, but it's, eventually you're going to be, I don't know.
I think that's the problem, I think if you're a Carlos Sainz, for argument's sake, you're a Carlos Sainz, yes, they're going to become Audi in 2026, but next year we've got a 30-race season with sprints. Do you want to do that in that car next year? Well, I'm not sure I'd want to endure that, even with better things to come on the horizon potentially. And also, you're gambling, aren't you, on Audi? So it's the manufacturer draw is a big draw, and I can see why drivers might want that. But then I look at that, where Sauber are right now, and I think if I was in their position, would I want to go through a year of that? Not sure I would. It's difficult. Pascal says if we can't get Sainz, I would be quite happy to get Ocon. See, Ocon was linked to Audi as well, or Sauber, but it sounds like possibly Haas, possibly Mercedes. It could be anywhere. Ocon could be anywhere or nowhere. We'll find out. A couple of things to clean up there before we get into Q&A. And that Albon said, disappointing end to our race today. Points were definitely on the table and the car felt good on all compounds in the changing conditions. Didn't take any unnecessary risks and the race plan was well executed by the team. A battle of survival, which was always going to be a case considering the weather. We ended up getting in other people's errors. Logan Sargeant, Logie Sarge, says the track conditions were difficult, especially at the start of the race with the amount of standing water. Quite a lot of aquaplaning going on, so I was trying to manage that. Made too many mistakes today and 2 punishing ones. Lost the rear extremely quickly, couldn't save it. Disappointed myself after feeling like I was driving great this weekend. We had good pace and we were able to put together clean laps. We'll move on and look ahead. Who else did we not say a lot on? Sauber. Where are we? Valtteri Bottas hasn't been the easiest day in the office. I hate when they call it an office. It's not an office. I went for a setup change to make the car more suitable to these weather conditions, and I think it was the right thing to do. As always, it was good to give it a try as it allowed us to unlock a bit more downforce. Staying out, though, while on the intermediate tyres was the correct move. We tried to be aggressive later with the slicks, but we possibly went a lap too early onto the dry tyres. Eventually did make it to the top 10 today. Didn't make the top 10 today, and I don't feel like we could have achieved much more than what was our pace. Yeah, we kind of already said that, didn't we? And Zhou Guanyu said, today has proven to be another tough race for us on top of what was already a challenging weekend. Quite a lot going on during the race. Been a lonely race for me, though, especially in the second half. Similarly to Monaco. Didn't feel too confident with the car, especially in terms of braking and cornering. Coming out of a weekend like this, we'll need to sit down and investigate our issues to address them in Barcelona. And anything else worth mentioning? We've been through RB. We should be fine there. Just check the decisions from the FIA as well. If I find my cursor, there we go. Let's see what we've got here. No updates at the moment, so we're still waiting for a final word on the incident between Russell and Piastri. I doubt there'll be anything there. And the unsafe condition for Sergio Perez, which will be, I'd imagine, a team fine. There is also the incident for Yuki Tsunoda National Anthem. That'll be a warning. Maybe a fine, and the Octane Racing Group thing, but there's nothing likely to affect the result, is what I would say. So,
I agree.
I don't know why you threw me off there. I was like, Stuart's here. When did you
so
arrive?
Yeah, I'm still here.
If you have any questions, please do pop them in chat. Try to keep them related to the race weekend or F1 in general, but we'll pretty much answer anything within reason. And whilst you're putting your questions in, please do drop a like as well. We're nearly at 200, just shy of 500 of you here. Let's get those likes up a little bit. That'd be fantastic. And don't forget to subscribe as well, so you don't miss out on all the content coming up later this year. Extra content, I doubt it. Content later this year. 3 races in a row coming up after next week, so it's going to be a little bit chaotic. So please do drop a like and subscribe. Really appreciate that one. I'm going to throw this to you then, Stuart, while they're putting their questions in.
Okay. Oh, okay.
We've
I also have a quote for you for later as well.
Oh, go on then. Go for the quote. Go on then. That's more important.
No, just gonna. I was thinking. Oh, while the questions are being prepped, I found this quote because we spoke way back when we were talking about Mercedes about why Hamilton seemed so disappointed, even though it seemed like a good result. And I got a little quote from him speaking to Sky when he said, "Just over the weekend, it was a really poor performance from myself. Some things came into it yesterday, but mostly me. And then it was just one of the worst races I've driven. So many mistakes. And if I qualified better, maybe I would have been in the best position. So it is what it is." So he was just mad at himself because he feels like he made quite a few mistakes this weekend. So just to tie up that loose end.
There you go.
All out of quote now. Sorry, you're going to throw something.
No, that's fine. No. I'm glad we got that cleared up. But I figured it'd be something along those lines. But it's good to get that just for anyone who didn't see that. No, I was just going to say it's been a busy week driver market news wise. Ocon leaving Alpine, rumours that he's going to go. Well, we've established 3 teams so far, haven't we? In the stream, so it could be anywhere. And Sergio Perez getting the deal with Red Bull. I know we've sort of touched on both of them, but I just wondered if there's anything you wanted to say on those, because I've given my opinion yesterday that I think the Perez timing is interesting. The length of the contract, even though it is a 1+1 as it turns out now, is also interesting. And the Ocon one, probably the right call for the team, but yeah. And then was what I said on that one. That's just your thoughts on how you think that's your thoughts on why it's played out that way, or what you think of Perez staying, Ocon getting the boots, right calls, wrong calls, that sort of thing. Just want to wait for some questions to come in, really. Put you on the spot. I love putting you on the spot.
Yeah. The Ocon one is interesting to me, even though I think, okay, yeah, that makes sense. You know, I think they're probably both looking in other pastures. I think the timing of the Ocon one is interesting. And while I do believe they've probably been chatting, negotiating about this for quite a while, and they already knew that they're going to be parting ways at the end of the season, they probably worked that out and were just working out contracts, working out press releases and all that kind of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. The fact that actually in the timeline it sort of went, Ocon crashed into teammate, team boss says there's definitely going to be repercussions, this is not on, and then Ocon fired like in quick succession. It kind of, I feel like there is a playing to the narrative there that kind of maybe stick the knife in a little bit, just a little bit, even though they've both been sort of officially playing nice in the press releases. The sort of the way that played out kind of maybe seems like they're giving the impression there's some punishment there that maybe there isn't, and they're, we've spoken about there being a sort of turbulent relationship there now for the rest of the season. I think that is probably part of it. The press one I find interesting. I think Red Bull could have been a bit bolder, done something a bit interesting, pulled from their junior driver pool or RB driver pool or something out there, or gone for a Carlos Sainz, or started to think about what happens when Max eventually leaves, which he will at some point. And I think on the last stream we spoke a little bit about, or maybe we spoke in DMs or something, but about Red Bull very happy with Max Verstappen at the moment, not really thinking about the future, and then one day things are going to change and they're going to be left unprepared like they have been before when they spent ages trying to fill that second seat to various disappointments. So yeah, it is weird. I think they could have taken an opportunity to put someone else in there, and I think considering sort of, I think, the sort of personal and career damage they did to both Gasly and Albon, I think, in how they, as younger, less experienced drivers struggled in that second seat. I don't think they necessarily did much worse than sort of Perez's up and downs have really been, given his experience. So they've definitely given him a lot more leeway than they have to definitely other drivers in that team.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of I can't help but feel there's been a lot of turmoil at Red Bull this year. You may have noticed, you may have heard some of it. It's been all over the media.
Yeah.
A lot of things changing. Adrian Newey's leaving, so maybe just having that bit of continuity is good for the team internally. But on track, Perez isn't delivering at the moment, and people will say, well, yeah, but look at the first part of the season, he was getting the podiums, that's great. But the problem is we had this last year as well. This isn't a one-off, and that's why maybe I'm being harsher on him now than I would have been 12 months ago, because everyone goes through dips, don't they? All drivers are going to have an off weekend or an off couple of weekends, but Perez, it's 3 on the bounce now, and it's around the same time as it happened last year as well. So I've got to be harder on him for that, and I just think it's I kind of see why they've done it internally, and I think, you've got to think about things like the money he brings from Mexico. You've got to think of, and his sponsor as well, of course, not just from the fans, but you also have to look at the relationship he has with Max is a good relationship, the continuity. So I can kind of see it, but just when you're looking at it, the on-track performances, it's a very strange call. But yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it's just those 3 races and Checo can bounce back. But again, we've been here before, and he may not. But we'll see. I'm not convinced Max, last year, people say, well, last year he didn't have to win a Constructors on his own, but I'm not convinced he'll be able to do that this year, with the field much closer and with, the McLarens and the Ferraris on some weekends, Ferrari anyway, challenging. So yeah, that was all really. And obviously we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in the coming weeks, and hopefully he can improve. Triple header is a great opportunity for him though. 5 races in 6 weeks. If he can get good results in those 5 races, suddenly things look much better, don't they? So hopefully that can be especially on a track like Barcelona, where I think everybody seems to be pretty sure Red Bull are going to be. I mean, they dominated last year. I think Max was 25 seconds up the road for everybody else. So that should be a track that they, on paper, should be fairly comfortable at. So maybe that's an opportunity for Checo to get the car in the right window and deliver. But if I was Christian Horner, which thank God I'm not, but if I was Christian Horner, I would not have signed Checo at this point. I might have signed him later in the year, but I wouldn't have done it at this stage, particularly with him struggling. But again, this could have all been decided weeks, months ago, so we'll never know for sure. As for RB, by the way, for anyone wondering in chat, I've already said it today. I think Red Bull, and Stuart's touching it there, need to start thinking about post Verstappen. And post Perez, because neither of them are going to be there forever. And Daniel Ricciardo, despite what has been, and I feel a bit bad saying it, he's had a great weekend, but one swallow summer doesn't make, and all that. But he's had a great weekend. But Daniel Ricciardo, he isn't the driver for them for the future, and they need to start thinking about the future. Yes, there's bias here, but I'd be putting Liam Lawson in that car in a heartbeat next year, or trying to, if for example, let's say Sainz does choose Audi for argument's sake, and Anthony does go to Mercedes, I'd maybe be trying to do a deal with Williams to get him in one of those cars. But he needs to be on the grid next year, Liam Lawson. Otherwise, if he doesn't do it this year, he won't be in F1. He won't make it to F1. It needs to be this year for next year. So there you go. Is how I feel on that one. Thank you very much to Machine Hum 2 for your super chat. Says the Perez thing screams RB thinking Max is leaving to me. They are ruthless with second drivers when first is stable. The fact that Perez has a new contract instead of getting canned? ? It's a fair point. I think that the news on, or the rumours of Verstappen leaving have definitely fallen away now. But that doesn't mean he won't go in 26, does it? So, yeah. But, yeah, thank you very much for your super chat there, Machine. I appreciate your support. Why Lawson never had Jar, though, says Moray. I mean, I've barely, just give me a second. Let me go find the F2 stuff, because I barely, I mean, look, I'm basing this as an F1, looking at it from an F1 point of view. Liam Lawson got in that car last year and outperformed Yuki Tsunoda in most of the races and outscored him as well. So I think he's probably earned that opportunity ahead of Hadjar, but no, Hadjar's having a good season, so he's got to be a name in the mix then. So Lawson or Hadjar then, I suppose, is the argument. Just a young driver, give them an opportunity and start thinking about the future, because Hadjar's doing it. Oh, he's won 2 races this year, 2 feature races. I didn't realise that. I knew he'd won 1. But yeah, good stuff from Isaac Hadjar. So yeah, not necessarily Lawson instead of Hadjar then, but a driver younger that they can start to prep for the future. But I think Liam Lawson did enough last year. Well, frankly, done last year to earn the seat last year. But anyway, it's not hate on Daniel Ricciardo, and I'm not Jacques Villeneuve, don't worry. I'm not quite as brutal as that. Did you see those quotes, Stuart?
I don't think I did. I see it a couple from Jacques Villeneuve because I know what he's like, but no, what were they roughly?
Let me try. So roughly, it was essentially that we've heard now for the last few years that teams are trying to make the car comfortable for Ricciardo, make it better for Ricciardo, so that it's comfortable for him to go racing. Why is he here? Why are they doing that? He can't adapt, basically, I think was the point he was making. I want to find a quote because it was brutal, and a lot of people have agreed with it, and I agree with a lot of the points made in it. I think there are, I'll say things that are harsh from time to time, but I think there are ways to say things sometimes. Let me try and find it for you.
If anyone knows, it's a guy who had 2 good years and 10 bad years in Formula 1.
Yeah. He said, so here's the quote. He said, why is he still in F1? You all talk about those first 2 seasons. He was beating a Vettel that was burnt out and trying to invent things. Then he was beating for half a season an 18-year-old Verstappen. He stopped beating anyone after that, ignoring Hulkenberg and Ocon, by the way. I think his image has kept him in F1 more than his actual results. And that came off the back of a point that he was making in commentary as well, when he was in the commentary box during practice, where they were talking about helmets and how drivers are changing them so often. And he said that essentially drivers need to stop it. They're here to race. We're not interested in the clowns and the social media kings. We're here to see races. And it's like, oh God, someone's let Grandad out again. I'm just glad Martin Brundle wasn't there with him. So yeah, quite brutal comments from Jacques Villeneuve. You know, there's nothing wrong with being honest about a driver's performance, but I think sometimes there are ways to word it. Daniel Ricciardo bit back though, said that he thinks he's taken 1 too many bumps on the head. So all the testosterone. Anyway,
yeah,
you know what it's like. But yeah, no, Jacques Villeneuve's been on Sky this weekend, so we've had some stuff. But yeah, Perez says Hadjar has been in F2 for multiple seasons and he's only doing well now because his competitors are gone. I did see somebody mention earlier that Porsche could be a shout for Sauber next year, and Audi. That's a good shout, to be fair. Actually, you got alongside Hulkenberg, Stuart. That might not be bad. Experience and youth or rookie. That might not be a terrible idea. Quite a tall lineup though.
That's fine. That means they can design the car.
Yeah, true.
Both of them. I'll be fine. And yeah, that's always a good combination, isn't it? If you, I think 2 rookies always gives you, some problems, and especially if you haven't got the experience to have a kind of baseline setup with the car and someone to measure against. So, yeah.
Alex Brooks says, why do you think RB how do you think RB will fare over the 2026 changes, just with a massive structural changes within the team and the power struggles? Seems Max is the few things keeping the team together. So 2026, aero's a big part of it, but it feels like the power unit's the big. I mean, look, the aero's a massive change, and obviously the getting rid of DRS and bringing in this mom. The memes write themselves. I'm gonna have so much fun with that. But yeah, that new mom or whatever they call it, the X and Y thing. Because they like to confuse people. Why not? That's going to be a huge change. But the power unit's the biggie that they're all talking about at the moment, isn't it? And I think of all the teams on the grid when it comes to the power unit, Red Bull is the one. Maybe Audi as well, but Red Bull is the one that I'm concerned about, because yes, they've had all this time with Honda. Yes, they bought the intellectual property. They've worked with them. They've got some experience in that area now, but it is a brand new power unit from a brand new power unit manufacturer with help on the electrical side from a manufacturer in Ford who haven't been in F1 for a long time. There are a lot of, and this is why I think that the rumours of Max Verstappen leaving for 2026 have probably got more weight to them than 2025, because there are a lot of things that can go wrong there for Red Bull. Plus, although they've got a great team of engineers, having an Adrian Newey absolutely to lean on is important, and losing him will have some sort of impact, I'm sure. There's a lot of changes, and I think Red Bull, Red Bull we could see Red Bull back very early doors, of course, but maybe back to where they were during Mercedes domination, sort of third best team some weekend, second another weekend, picking up the odd win here and there. But at the same time, Stuart, they could nail the power unit, they could nail the aero, and absolutely give us another 5 or 6 years of domination if they wanted to, if they can get it right.
Yeah, and I absolutely get the sort of wisdom behind Red Bull not necessarily being best placed, especially with that engine, and possibly with the aero, and people looking at someone like Mercedes to be more likely to get the jump on those new engine regs. But you just don't know until they bring them out, and these are a complicated and quite dramatic kind of set of changes we're going to be dealing with. And, maybe that involves a whole separate discussion about what they are, but we're having power boost, we're having much bigger electrical components to the engines and sort of a smaller power output from the combustion. It's a whole revamp, for better or worse. And I've noticed a lot of the teams and drivers making a lot of the same concerns that you've been making, actually, of being like, we are starting to see convergence now. Why are we throwing us all away? But I do get they have to kind of move forward with some of these things and look to the next sort of generation of these cars. So yes, I don't think it's guaranteed at all that Red Bull are going to be in a good position by 2026, and I could see why someone like Max Verstappen or maybe other people in that team might be looking elsewhere. Where you'd go, very hard to say, because it is hard to know who's going to nail these regulations in one, because it's aero, it's engines, it's everything all at once. And I mean, we haven't had adaptive front wings since 2009, which I think was the only year we had adjustable front wings, which were kind of useless and pointless anyway. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a lottery, really, in terms of guessing who's going to come out on top of these things. So who knows? Is my ultimate line on that.
Yeah, we could have a 2009, couldn't we? Or we could have a 2014. It really could go either way. It's unlike, we don't tend to see in-betweens in F1, do we, in those situations? It's one way or the other. Warren making it, I was just going to say there, but I'll let Warren have the shout-out. Says, really fast in a straight line, but can't corner. That's been the big concern I've seen in the last sort of 24, 48 hours, is that these regulations, these cars are going to be too fast. I think is the quote I saw: too fast in a straight line and too slow in the corners, which of course is what we want. Lots of cars blasting past each other in a straight line if you're lucky. I'm going to be honest, Stuart. I'm very underwhelmed by the regulations, and I'm not happy with them. So I'm glad that I'm not going to have to try and either drive these cars or design them. Frankly, I think, and I do think that yes, these cars are big and clunky, but I don't think we're getting smaller, lighter, more nimble cars, but they are still going to be massively overweight and massively too big. So it's not like we're going to go back to 90,
shaving,
but it's not going to be huge. I don't think it's going to be revolutionary in that sense. I think the revolutionary stuff is around the active aero, the power unit and things, but it just doesn't excite me very much. And it's frustrating once again, as you've already said, and as we've said so many times, that we've got convergence now in the field. Even in the races this year, Max Verstappen has disappeared up front. It's still been so competitive behind, and now that gap is closing to Red Bull, and then they're going to reset the regulations, and we're going to get a Mercedes doing a 2014 or a Red Bull doing a 2022 or God, fingers crossed, Ferrari doing a 2004. But it's pure domination, because that just tends to be the way it goes. And I just don't like the regulations, but I think that's a proper conversation for another day, because that's one I think I could moan about for a good 4 hours.
Yeah, and I guess at 10 to midnight, it's a
bit late.
we can't start a big rant about those now. Yeah, but very, let's say, interesting decisions being made, including undoing quite a bit of the stuff that they did for 2022, which was an interesting choice, but sure.
Well, that's the other thing as well. Like, I know that they were delayed by a year, but it doesn't seem like we've had these ones for 5 minutes. We're already changing them again in 2 years' time. Is that? I know that I think the rules were due to change for the power unit in 26 anyway, and the aero as well tends to get a tweak around that. But then maybe I'm making this up or whatever, but I don't know if maybe there's an acceptance that the rules in 22 didn't work, so they've gone a bit more extreme with the aero. Maybe behind the scenes, I don't know, but I'm sure we'll find out in the future. But yeah, Pascal says Porsche is doing quite well in IndyCar at the moment. I would love to see him at Sauber, but he might even stay in IndyCar. I'm not going to read that. I'm not reading that one out. There's a rumor. I saw somebody mentioned a rumor about Ollie Behrman has signed with Haas. That was that came from the Daily Mail. Have you ever watched Dinner Ladies, Stuart? I'm going somewhere, trust me. The Victoria Wood sitcom.
I have, not religiously, but I have seen it.
I can't remember her name, but the old lady was also in Coronation Street, and she's like, I read it in the Daily Mail. Sorry. My mum's like that. Well, the Daily Mail said, oh, well, then it's bollocks then, isn't it? But, Ollie Behrman to Haas is the point, I guess, there. But I think that's one of, provided he performs in the FP1 sessions, I think that's like F1's worst kept secret at the moment, isn't it? That Haas, again, provided he performs in those sessions, are probably going to take him alongside a Magnussen or an Ocon or whoever else they've got lined up. I'd be very surprised if Behrman's not there. But I've been surprised before. Maybe they'll bring back Mick Schumacher or another rookie they've had recently. You never know.
With Haas, you really do never know. Maybe they'll bring in some scrawny kid with no experience whose dad is a billionaire, because that's the kind of decisions they do sometimes.
We'll see what happens. But yeah, no, Behrman, great. I think as well the Antonelli thing to Mercedes, although I still think too soon. We've discussed this in DM, Stuart. If I'm Toto Wolff, I get what they're saying. I sort of would be tempted to get him in there and get him settled for 26, but then there'd be a big part of me of thinking, do what we did with George Russell, 2 or 3 years at Williams, get Sainz on board, get things settled in 2026 and make sure the cars do what you need it to do, and then look at whether you want to go with Russell and Antonelli or Sainz and Antonelli going forward. But I think a few years at the back with a little bit less pressure, assuming Williams are at the back, of course, but Williams are likely to be back there somewhere, a bit less pressure than there will be in the main team. Not quite so big shoes to fill is another point, I suppose. There'll be a lot of pressure with that, and I think that would be good for Antonelli, but it sounds like they're going to put him in that car for I think they're thinking long term, aren't they? It is the quotes I've seen this weekend that they're focusing on youth, and actually to kind of contradict what I said and to give Mercedes some credit, they are really the only of the ones of the top team that haven't done that lately. Russell did his here's one for you. His national service at Williams for Mercedes. So he did that there, and then obviously Verstappen did some time at Toro Rosso a season, did in a bit, and then moved to Red Bull, and Leclerc did a season at Sauber and then moved to Ferrari. But Mercedes are the only ones that haven't really taken a gamble. They turned down for varying reasons and some fair reasons, your Verlines and your Ocons, for example. So maybe it is time they took the plunge, but it's a lot of pressure. And that's my worry. Can he handle it? I don't know. If you're old enough, if you're good enough, you're old enough. But yeah, I worry about him a little bit. Is my point.
Yeah, me too. And we discussed this in DMs. I completely agree with you. I think giving him a couple of training years and in Williams, which is a sort of associated team, smaller team, just like George Russell did, will put him and Mercedes in a good position in a couple of years' time. So, but maybe they're negotiating options are limited and they just need to grab them while they can. Who knows? I think Mercedes have got in a slightly strange position right now with having that seat unexpectedly vacant, but I would definitely be grabbing Sainz if I were them.
Milo says everyone loves Hamilton's first season. Give Antonelli the chance to blow us away like he did again. That was
very rare and very bizarre, I think, in terms of a top team, especially McLaren doing something like that was pretty wild. But I think at the time, and I can't speak for Ron Dennis, but I think in theory, the idea was they had Alonso to do the championship fighting work for them, and it'd be a great second seat for Hamilton to learn and develop and become the driver they want him to be. And he sort of unexpectedly sort of became a joint number one championship fighting driver. I think that was all a bit of a happy accident or unhappy accident, depending on which part of that season you look at. Yeah, and that I mean that is a big gamble for a team that is supposedly going to be looking for regular wins, podiums, championships in theory, as their goal. But if they can manage that, if they can keep his head straight, allow him to make mistakes, develop him without humiliating him in the way that Red Bull have done with some of their junior drivers. If they can manage that and make that work, then more power to them. But I worry for the team and the driver in that case, but I do worry for Antonelli more because joining F1 is probably the most vulnerable part of your whole career, because you kind of need to make it work pretty quickly without looking like you're a liability. And the opportunity to make mistakes is pretty high in those first couple of years, and you need someone to just coach you through that, and a good team, I think. So yeah.
I'm just checking something on the FIA website. No changes on anything there, but yeah, no. We'll see what they decide, but I'm just nervous for him, but we'll see what happens. Pedder does say it's important to note that Kevin is actually really liked in Haas, both on and off track, and Gene loves Kevin. The question is Gene willing to go with a different option than Kevin? I think... Now, I might be making this up. I think I read somewhere either earlier today or yesterday that I think Gene Haas is making the call on that seat. So that could be an important point there from Pedder actually to look at. But I'm sure Komatsu will have a say, and there comes a point where you have to look at the incidents and things like that, and maybe Gene Haas might think, you cost me a bit here, K-Mag. Maybe cut back on the incidents and we'll think about it. But it'll all come down to performance. If Kevin Magnussen doesn't perform, then Gene Haas won't keep him. But it's a good point. It's a good point. Stuart about to say, without doing a Logan Sargeant, caught yourself nicely there, says Warren. I don't know if you were going to say that, Stuart, but there you go. Now, go on then. I was just going to find another question.
No, I was going to say, no, I wasn't going to say, I wasn't actually, but now that you mention it.
Any more questions before we wrap things up then? I'm just trying to dodge through different conversations and whatnot, because the amount of times I read them out and they go, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. Or is Audi doing a Brawn, says Latox. Yeah. Do you know, that'd be a hell of a story, wouldn't it? If they did a Brawn, given that, yes, they're buying Sauber in the state they're in at the moment, and they turn that into a championship winning team in their first season. Goodness me, they'll all be queuing at the door, won't they? For that seat. Unlikely, but we'll see.
I'd love it, but yes, I say. I mean, they did all right as BMW, but that didn't happen immediately, of course.
Yes. Well, BMW are weird. Yeah. I hope Audi don't do the same thing as some of these manufacturers do, where they come, stick around for 3 years and disappear, then go, oh, I want to come back now, and keep messing about. But, well, I'm sure they'll stay around forever. They won't. Rate the Canadian Grand Prix. That was the poll today. Great. 66% said great. 26% said good. 5% said average/okay. And bad was 1%. 1.1k votes and only 212 likes. I guess it is clicking a button twice, so I suppose fair enough. But no, would you agree with that, Stuart? 66% great. I would say I have a lot of criteria for the word great. So I would say very good.
Okay, but you didn't give very good as an option.
I didn't. So in between great and good.
I clicked great is how I voted, because I thought it had a little bit of everything. Was never really, maybe until the last few laps, but I weren't absolutely convinced I knew who the winner was going to be throughout the whole race. There was some overtakes, there was some mistakes, there was some nail-biting strategy decisions to be made, regarding weather and safety cars. So yeah, I think it was good fun. And considering we came straight off the back of a race where nothing happened, apart from a lap one crash, a huge breath of fresh air. So I was happy to click great.
I think that's fair. I'm just trying to think of the other races this season as to whether I want to declare that race of the year. But to be fair, it's a fairly bloody low bar, isn't it? So
Yeah.
probably is. I think the fact that I'm struggling to remember the races maybe gives me an answer. I don't know, but I mean, Monaco was pretty epic, wasn't it? I mean, record-breaking Monaco, of course. Yes, first time ever that top 10 didn't bloody move. I mean, not literally, they did move, but there you go. Yeah, I don't know.
Things have happened, but I feel like more things happened today.
Yeah. And things have. Despite the fact that, sometimes when you're watching F1, you can get these situations where you've got a drying line and then off the racing line is too wet for anything to happen. We still had drivers trying things on. I mean, going back to Mercedes again, actually a good point to make. When Russell went to make the move on Hamilton sort of left him a car's width knowing it was wet there, and Russell was quite happy to drive on the wet patch there to get past his teammate. That can go very easily wrong. So we still it's very easy sometimes for drivers just to sit in a groove almost, in the train tracks or the tram tracks that are left.
Yeah.
But I think we still saw enough going on. Obviously, with most races, even the best, they could still be better. But I enjoyed it. And it was tense because there was that, like I said, even when Max was pulling away towards the end, there's still that, that's still that Vettel Canada 2011. One wheel slightly wide at one of the corners and you're off the track and you've lost the win. So there's always that jeopardy there. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. There'll be a lot of people that didn't, but I think some people are just never going to be happy, whatever. But we'll leave it there before we get into that territory. Thank you very much, Stuart. It's been a pleasure as always to chat to you about F1, and hopefully more of this in dry races to come in the coming weeks. Although it's Europe and it can, the rain could come. Maybe we'll have a wet Spanish Grand Prix. Maybe. Or it's going to be a proper Spanish Grand Prix where it's dull as shit.
Spain in the middle of June is classically wet.
Of course, that's why we're going on holiday there.
I know I'm meant to be saying goodbye, but I was just saying to my friend today, it's like it's very strange to be in the middle of June and only just getting to Spain when it sort of used to be the kind of introduction to the European season, and we're sort of halfway through the year now. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, we're well into the European season, aren't we? Because we've done Imola, Europe, Monaco, Europe, Canada, F1 thinks is Europe, and then we're on to Spain. Yeah, no, you're right. You usually expect Spain to be the first because that's when we get all the B-spec cars, isn't it? What we used to do. So that's a good point to think about that. But a lot of flyaways now, though, aren't they? They're trying to regionalise the calendar a bit more, so I guess that's why. But Spain in August in the pandemic, didn't we? So it'll be a bit cooler than that. Hopefully.
That is true. So yeah, we'll see. I'm hoping we get a nice, fun and interesting Spain. It's got to be better than Monaco. So and I think I'm expecting Red Bull to show themselves a bit better than they have done the last few races.
I've spent Saturdays on the Lincoln bypass that were more exciting than Monaco, but there you go. Thank you very much, Joe. I'll let you go because it's getting late now, but it's been great chatting to you, and we will talk soon, I am sure.
We sure will. Cheers and good night, everybody whose time it is night. Ta-ra for now.
Cheers, Stuart. Thank you. Bye. Thank you to Stuart, and thank you to all of you guys as well for tuning in for our reaction-y, waffly nonsense. A pleasure as always. Just a reminder before you go, please do drop a like and don't forget to subscribe as well. I will keep banging the drum. It really helps the channel out, so I appreciate that. And another reminder as well, the next video on the channel is most likely going to be a week on Thursday, the Spain preview, because I'm doing some work elsewhere. So I'll be focusing on that over this coming week. And then it's 3 races on the bounce though, so we'll have the previews for all of those weekends. We'll have the qualifying watch-alongs as well and the race reactions. So lots of content still to come. And then before you know it, we're at the summer break and it'll soon be Christmas. There you go. So thank you for your company. Like I say, leave a like, follow me on social media, all of that jazz. You can support the channel as well with Patreon, etc. In the description. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.